Hello and welcome back to another video. This is the third episode of story where Naruto responds to his isolation in a way that deviates from canon. What strategies will Konoha employ to handle a seal master Jinchuriki who possesses a subdued attitude yet an outrageous perverted side? Please like and subscribe to show your support. It's high time to begin. Inside the Hokage's office, the air was thick with unspoken tension. Team 7 stood quietly as the Sandame, Hiruzen Sarutobi, carefully read over Kakashi's report. His expression was unreadable, a mask of calm that hid whatever thoughts were running through his mind. When he finished, he placed the scroll down and turned his full attention to the lone jounin standing before him. Kakashi met his gaze, his normally carefree demeanor gone, replaced with a resolute seriousness. "Is all of this true, Kakashi?" the Hokage asked, his voice measured. "Hi." Hiruzen nodded slowly, digesting the information. "Well done, Team 7, he said at last, a hint of approval in his voice. "You are no longer provisional, but full ninja of Konoha. Congratulations." A small, proud smile flickered across Naruto's face, and his teammates seemed to stand a little taller at the acknowledgement. Then, Hiruzen shifted the mood with a simple command. "If you and Haku-san would excuse us, I'd like to speak with Kakashi alone." As the team turned to leave, the Hokage's voice cut through the room once more. "Naruto-kun?" The casual familiarity of the nickname startled Sasuke and Sakura. Naruto had often mentioned an Aji-san, but it had never crossed their minds that the Hokage himself was the one he had been talking about. They exchanged puzzled glances, still processing this revelation. "Yes, Aji-san?" Naruto responded, his voice betraying no surprise. "Saikuen and your regular escort will meet you at Training Ground 23 at 7 a.m. tomorrow." "Hi," Naruto acknowledged. With that, Team 7 exited the office, Kakashi having already informed them they would have a brief break from missions. But as they left, the Hokage and Kakashi both caught a subtle shift in Sasuke's expression, a flicker of suspicion, a sense that Naruto was receiving special attention or privileges. It was a seed of doubt, and it could lead to dangerous places in time. Once the team had gone, the Hokage's gaze sharpened on Kakashi. His voice was firm, but not without concern. "Kakashi, what were you thinking? You should have called for backup the moment those missing nin attacked." Kakashi didn't flinch. "I believed I could handle any unexpected risks that arose." "Yes, but you didn't handle it," Hiruzen countered, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "Tell me, if you hadn't had a seal master on your team, how do you think this would have played out?" Kakashi exhaled slowly before answering, knowing the Hokage was right. "I would have had to fight Zabuza immediately upon entering wave. Maybe I could have won, but with my students to protect, I couldn't fight at full strength. And if his apprentice had joined in, I could have been overwhelmed." "Yes," Hiruzen agreed, his tone softening as he touched on a more personal topic. "This Haku. She seems close to Naruto-kun, and you don't seem concerned by that." Kakashi shook his head slightly. "They grew close during the mission. I watched them closely, Hokage-sama. She's not a threat. She's just a young woman trying to find herself after everything with Zabuza. For some reason, she and Naruto understand each other on a deeper level." The Hokage's eyes narrowed slightly, thoughtful. "And yet, after years with Zabuza, she comes here while he returns to Kiri?" "She's not a killer," Kakashi said, confidence in his voice. "Zabuza knew it. I knew it. And I think even you can sense it." Hiruzen didn't immediately respond, but after a moment, he nodded. "I will allow this for now. But if it turns out to be some trick, or if Naruto-kun gets hurt." His voice trailed off ominously, and Kakashi couldn't help but shiver at the unspoken threat. The Sandame had a reputation, and it wasn't one to be trifled with. "I'm confident she would never harm Naruto," Kakashi reassured him. I wouldn't put Minato-sensei's son at risk. There was a brief silence as Hiruzen weighed Kakashi's words. The mention of Minato stirred something in the older man, memories of a prodigy who had once stood in Naruto's place. Yes, I can see that in the report. But what made you call off the clone? Kakashi sighed, finally revealing what had been weighing on his mind. I know my students will have to take lives eventually, but the heat of battle and an assassination are different. They feel different. I wasn't sure Naruto was ready for that. I wasn't sure how he'd handle it, and I didn't want to risk overwhelming him. The Hokage's expression softened just slightly. I understand. Your instinct to shield them is admirable, but you won't always have that choice. Circumstances change, and you may have to let them face the harsh realities sooner than you'd like. Kakashi nodded in understanding, though it was clear the thought troubled him. But before they could dwell on it, Hiruzen shifted the conversation again. Regardless, you handled the mission well. I'll likely have Shikaku add your tactics to the Chunin seminars. Your use of basic techniques in more advanced ways was impressive. Kakashi couldn't help but let a small smile tug at the corner of his lips. You trained Naruto well, he remarked, a touch of irony in his voice. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. I've done very little direct training with Naruto-kun. Stories, hints, perhaps. But beyond that? Hardly. Kakashi's gaze grew more intense. Then we have a problem. My team is unbalanced, gravely so. C-rank missions are supposed to push the team, but with Naruto's ceiling abilities and mentality, he skews everything. If I let him operate at full capacity, Sasuke and Sakura are left behind. If I hold him back, they get more experience, but the risk to all of them increases unnecessarily. The question is, who do I stunt? The Hokage listened carefully, understanding the weight of Kakashi's dilemma. Naruto created that ceiling tag to track Gado's men in under an hour, Kakashi added, almost in disbelief. I underestimated just how prodigious he is. Hiruzen nodded. Yes, that seal is impressive. We'll have to incorporate it into our defenses against infiltrators. As for your team, you're right. The balance is off. For the next C-rank, I'll make Naruto unavailable so Sasuke and Sakura can gain experience. Kakashi seemed to appreciate the suggestion and nodded, silently thankful for the Hokage's understanding. He was dismissed soon after, and Hiruzen was left alone with his thoughts, pondering his surrogate grandson. Naruto's talents, particularly his genius with sealing techniques, were growing more apparent with each mission. Kakashi was right, no genin, not even the most prodigious, should possess such mastery at this stage. It wasn't sustainable to hold him back, and yet, pushing him too far too fast could be equally dangerous. The Chunin exams loomed in Hiruzen's mind. They were still months away, but it was becoming clear that Naruto wouldn't remain a genin for long. He was no ordinary shinobi, and Hiruzen was already planning how best to ensure Naruto's promotion was handled justly, without sparking too much controversy. It was also becoming harder to keep him hidden from the world, especially after his recent conversation with the daimyo. The Sandaime let out a long, slow breath. Naruto was a force, like a river carving its path through stone. It couldn't be stopped, only guided. And soon, the world would see what the son of Minato was truly capable of. Haku and Naruto walked through the bustling streets of Konoha, the village around them alive with its usual activity. Yet, despite the energy of the place, Haku couldn't help but notice the way people seemed to glance at Naruto, their expressions wary or uncomfortable. It saddened her. Here was someone so full of life, so eager to connect with others, and yet the villagers kept him at arm's length. They didn't see what she saw, how kind and compassionate he was, how easy it was to be around him. She thought back to their time in Nami, when they had first started spending more time together. At first, it was simply a matter of circumstance. With Zabuza-sama returning to Kiri and her deciding to stay behind, Naruto had been a constant presence in her life, someone she could turn to as she struggled to figure out who she was now that her path had shifted. What she appreciated most was how natural it was to be with him. They could sit in silence, and she didn't feel the need to fill the space with words. He didn't judge her or ask anything from her, not even after she had cried on his shoulder the day Zabuza had left. That had been one of the most difficult conversations of her life. Zabuza-sama had finally admitted the truth, that his reluctance to return to Kiri had been more about his own shame over his defeat than any strategic decision. He had used her as an excuse, blaming her inability to kill as a sign she wasn't ready. She had used him too, hiding behind her loyalty to avoid facing the fact that she wanted something more for herself. But in the end, Zabuza had understood. He had even encouraged her to stay behind, to figure out who she was outside of war and bloodshed. It had been the first time they had spoken as equals, not master and servant. Since then, Naruto had been her anchor. They trained together, walked around Nami, and even shared quiet moments by the docks. One night, after she revealed her bloodline limit to him, he had been so fascinated by her Hayatan abilities that he'd stayed up all night working on something. The next day, he had excitedly shown her his creation, a seal that could channel her Hayatan chakra to make shaved ice. Not only that, he had Gamakichi fetch fruits to make syrups, and they spent the day handing out snow cones to the village children. The memory brought a smile to her face. Most people would have thought of her bloodline in terms of battle, but Naruto had immediately seen a way to bring joy with it. That was just who he was. Haku? Naruto's voice pulled her out of her thoughts. She responded, blinking as she realized they had arrived at their destination. We're here, Naruto said, gesturing toward a modest building. Your room is next to mine. Haku was momentarily confused. She had assumed she would stay with Naruto until she got on her feet, but it seemed he had something else in mind. They climbed the stairs, and Naruto stopped at a simple-looking door. You have to channel chakra through the doorknob, Naruto explained. She did as instructed, and for a brief moment, a complex seal flared to life before the door clicked open. Haku stepped inside and was immediately taken aback. The apartment was cozy and tastefully furnished. A blue couch sat in the living room alongside a matching chair, with a dark oak coffee table and television stand. There was a small kitchen table separating the living room from the kitchenette. She wandered toward one of the doors and found a bedroom, the bed made with soft chocolate-brown sheets. To her surprise, the closet was filled with women's clothes, all in her size. Even Chappie, her little pet ferret, had his own bed where he was napping peacefully. And Naruto, she stammered, turning to him in disbelief. Where are your things? Did you do this? For me? Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. My apartment is next door. This one's yours. He motioned toward the room. Gamakichi helped me get Ino-chan to pick out the clothes, and Jiraiya-sensei helped with the security seals. Remember when you channeled chakra into that seal on the way here? That was to set you as the primary user. The place is all yours. Haku's eyes welled with unshed tears as she rushed forward, wrapping Naruto in a tight hug. Thank you, Naruto. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You don't need to repay me, he said earnestly. You're my friend. Haku held on to him a little longer, letting the warmth of his words sink in. A home. For the first time in so long, she had a place that was hers. The weight of the gesture was almost overwhelming. When she finally let go, she wiped her eyes, giving him a grateful smile. Naruto, ever humble, didn't seem to understand just how much this meant to her, but that was part of his charm. Naruto headed for the door but paused to ask, do you want to meet some of my friends later? Haku nodded, and with that, he left, giving her some space to settle in. As he exited the apartment, however, he ran into Jiraiya, who was waiting by his own door. Aerodana? Naruto greeted him, raising an eyebrow. Jiraiya sighed heavily. Gaki, you've really got to stop calling me that. But you did introduce yourself as a super pervert, Naruto pointed out, grinning. Granted, but how am I supposed to attract the ladies if you keep calling me that? Jiraiya grumbled, though the twinkle in his eye betrayed his amusement. Naruto tilted his head, pretending to think. Were you attracting ladies before I started calling you that? Why, you little brat! Jiraiya exclaimed, though there was no real anger in his voice. Naruto chuckled, enjoying his godfather's antics. Jiraiya always knew how to lighten the mood. Jiraiya's expression turned serious after a moment. I'm actually here on a mission. Someone has a seal that's been giving me trouble, and I want you to take a look at it. You can tell me about your first C rank and this kunoichi you romanced along the way. Romanced? Naruto blinked in confusion. I didn't romance anyone. Jiraiya scoffed. Kid, if you don't know what romance is, no wonder I'm worried. I wrote the book on Shinobi romance. Naruto shot him a deadpan look. Your female characters are underdeveloped. Jiraiya threw his hands up in exasperation. I swear, everyone's a critic. They bantered all the way to their destination, a secure ANBU facility hidden beneath the village. Jiraiya led Naruto through a series of tunnels until they reached a chamber set up for sealing work. Inside, sitting on a hospital bed, was none other than Anko Mitarashi. Her eyes widened in surprise when she saw Naruto. What's the half-pint doing here? She asked, frowning. I don't want some amateur messing with my seal. Jiraiya placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Relax, Anko. Naruto here is the seal master sensei told you about. The one who invented that bracelet you're wearing. Anko raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical but desperate enough to give it a shot. Okay, Blondie. Let's see what you can do. Naruto approached calmly, performing a series of hand signs before activating his projection jutsu. To Anko, it looked as if he were staring off into space, but in reality, Naruto was analyzing her curse mark. His eyes narrowed as he delved deeper into the seal's composition, his mind working through the layers of complexity. That's not right, he muttered under his breath, catching the attention of both Jiraiya and Anko. The more Naruto examined the curse mark, the more he realized it wasn't just a seal. There was something else embedded within it, a stored consciousness, along with another type of energy that wasn't chakra. It seemed to be linked to aggression control and physical enhancement, but there were limiters in place, as if the seal expected the host to tap into some power beyond their body's natural capacity. Anko-chan, how was this seal applied to you? Naruto asked. I was bitten, Anko replied, a note of bitterness in her voice. Naruto's brow furrowed. A bite? That was unusual for sealing. Most seals were applied through chakra, usually through the hands. The bite must have been significant, Naruto thought, his mind spinning with new theories. Activating a diagnostic jutsu, he began scanning the seal for organic compounds. What he found left him dismayed. The seal was a hybrid of chakra and some sort of enzyme, an organic compound that reacted to chakra in a volatile way. The enzyme destabilized the chakra network, essentially stripping away control from the host. Naruto's face grew grim. This is a mess. He explained his findings to Jiraiya, who cursed under his breath once Naruto finished. Orochimaru, Jiraiya muttered darkly. He tried to create a Sage Mode seal. He was trying to incorporate senjutsu into whoever bore the mark. Naruto nodded. But the enzyme is too unstable. It reacts to the senjutsu energy in a way that the host can't regulate. Anko's eyes widened in panic. Does that mean you can't remove it? Naruto shook his head. I think I can. If I can neutralize the enzyme or stabilize it long enough, should be able to remove the seal. Both Anko and Jiraiya stared at him in shock. Jiraiya recovered first, though his expression was serious. Gaki, you might actually be able to pull this off. With the right tools and research, yes, Naruto answered confidently. But I can't give you a timeline, Anko-chan. I don't want to promise something I can't deliver. Anko smiled faintly, a mixture of hope and wariness in her eyes. You've already given me more hope than I've had in years, Blondie. Naruto nodded and promised to get to work. As they left the chamber, Naruto summoned a group of clones to head straight to the hospital's labs and begin researching how to neutralize the enzyme. He knew it would take time, but he was determined to help Anko. Jiraiya, however, still seemed hesitant. When Naruto pressed him for more information, Jiraiya grew evasive. Look, I might have a way to help if it comes to that, but for now, keep doing what you're doing. Naruto frowned, not understanding why Jiraiya wouldn't share his method up front. Why delay if you think you can help? Jiraiya's expression grew conflicted. It's complicated, Naruto. Just, trust me on this one, okay? Naruto didn't like it, but he didn't push further. He had work to do, and the sooner he figured out how to break the curse mark, the better. As Jiraiya vanished in a puff of smoke, Naruto headed back toward his apartment, already forming a plan to enlist Tsunade and Shizen's help. Whatever obstacles lay ahead, Naruto was ready. Anko deserved to be free, and he would make sure she was. Several hours later, Naruto and Haku made their way toward the Hyuga compound, the soft glow of the village lanterns lighting their path. Naruto was dressed in a simple blue V-neck shirt with black pants and blue sandals, his usual casual attire, but somehow neater for the evening ahead. Haku, on the other hand, looked graceful in an aquamarine floral print kimono with black, low-heeled sandals. As they walked, their conversation drifted naturally, Naruto filling her in on the Hyuga clan, particularly Hinata, with whom he was clearly close. As they rounded a corner, they spotted Ino up ahead, her movements slightly stiff and labored. Naruto immediately noticed something was wrong and quickened his pace, Haku following closely. Ino-chan, what's wrong? Naruto asked, concern in his voice. Ino winced slightly, still trying to catch her breath. Asuma-sensei has upped the intensity of our training, she said with a strained smile, though clearly worn out. Naruto blinked in confusion. I thought you said he was lazy. How'd you convince him to train you more? A blush crept across Ino's face as she recalled the somewhat embarrassing way she had lit a fire under her sensei. She really didn't want to share the details of that conversation, but Naruto's earnest curiosity left her no choice. The memory surfaced, and she cringed slightly, inwardly reliving the moment that led her to this exhausted state. Asuma-sensei, you need to start training us seriously. We're the weakest team from our graduating class. Ino had nearly shouted in frustration, fed up with their slow progress. Asuma had merely waved her off, his usual laid-back attitude on full display. Ino, you're just a genin. There's no need to rush. I want to ease you guys into this lifestyle so you don't burn out. That had only fueled Ino's determination, and in a moment of complete frustration, she had blurted out, the rush? The rush is that I don't want to lose my virginity to Hinata Hyuga and Naruto Uzumaki because I was too weak to stand up to that little psycho. The words had barely left her mouth before she turned bright red, the entire team staring at her in shock. But it worked. Asuma had agreed to push their training harder, though she couldn't help but notice the amused look on his face, likely at the thought of denying Naruto a hypothetical romantic conquest. It wasn't her finest moment, but it got results. Ino quickly brushed off the awkwardness and, realizing she needed a distraction, turned her attention to Haku. Naruto, aren't you going to introduce me to your guest? She asked, trying to divert the conversation. Oh. Right, Naruto said, snapping back to the present. Ino-chan, this is Yuki Haku. Haku offered a polite smile and a bow. It's nice to meet you, Ino-san. I understand I have you to thank. For my wardrobe. Ino brightened at that, the shift in focus a welcome relief. Nice to meet you too, Haku-san. And I'm glad you like it. It's not every day a toad with a wad of cash asks you to go shopping, but hey, I've got good taste. You certainly do. I appreciate it. Ino smiled, sensing that she and Haku were going to get along just fine. We're going to be great friends, Haku-san, I can already tell. The trio continued their walk, chatting easily until they arrived at the gates of the Hyuga compound. They were granted immediate entrance, and as they followed their escort, they ran into none other than Hayashi Hyuga, the clan head and Hinata's father. His sharp gaze swept over the group, and Haku and Ino immediately bowed in respect, offering their greetings. Naruto, of course, was less formal. Good evening, Hyuga Hayashi-san, Naruto said, his tone polite yet casual, completely ignoring the need for formal titles. Hayashi inwardly sighed. The boy was such a mix of his parents, polite like Minato, but with Kushina's complete disregard for formality. Still, he had a grudging respect for the boy, especially for the way Naruto had helped Hinata break free of her crippling shyness. That, however, didn't extend to the influence he was having on his younger daughter. I will defeat you today, Uzumaki, came a sharp, determined voice. Hayashi sighed again as Hanabi, his youngest daughter, marched up to Naruto, her eyes blazing with challenge. She had always been so dignified before Naruto had entered their lives. Hanabi, that is not how we greet guests in this house, Hayashi said, his voice a mixture of weariness and reprimand. Hanabi rolled her eyes. Greetings to you all, she said with a hint of sarcasm, even you, Uzumaki team. Hanabi. Hinata's voice rang out as she appeared behind her father and sister, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Be polite. Hanabi shrugged, unfazed by her sister's scolding. She won't always be here to protect you, Naruto, she said before stalking off, still muttering about how she would beat him one day. Ino watched the entire exchange with wide eyes before turning to Naruto. What did you do to her? Naruto blinked, clearly confused. I beat her in a staring contest. Ino stared at him, incredulous. That's it? Naruto shrugged. I mean, it wasn't even that intense. She's really competitive. Hinata stepped forward, smiling shyly at Naruto and the others. Come this way, dinner will be ready soon. The group followed Hinata into a small dining room, leaving Hayashi behind to lecture Hanabi on her behavior. Inside, the atmosphere was much more relaxed as they sat around the table and shared stories over dinner. Ino and Hinata, curious about Naruto's recent mission, asked him to tell the story of his C rank. Naruto, having read some books about communication, made sure to include plenty of details to keep things interesting. He ended the story with an odd note about the client's daughter. So, she put together a picnic basket for Haku and me. And she hugged me a lot. It was weird. The three girls burst into laughter at Naruto's bewildered tone. What? Naruto asked, genuinely confused. Naruto-kun, she was just being motherly, Hinata explained gently, her soft voice filled with amusement. From what you said about her son, Inari, she probably saw you as someone her son looked up to. She likely hugged you because she was grateful. That was motherly? Naruto asked, looking slightly baffled as the girls all nodded in unison. Huh. I guess it wasn't too bad, then. As the conversation continued, Ino turned to Haku. So, Haku, what are your plans now? Haku's expression softened, her eyes thoughtful. I'm not sure. I haven't been able to stay in one place for so long, and I never really thought about what I'd do if I did. I want to keep my skills sharp, but I don't know if I want to be a full-time ninja. Ino nodded, understanding. Well, without a clan affiliation, that might be tricky. But what about becoming a reservist? You'd have the status of a ninja but wouldn't have to go on missions unless you wanted to. Haku smiled, the idea appealing to her. That could work. I just need to find a job first. Naruto, ever practical, immediately offered, you can work with me, Haku. I could use the help. Haku tilted her head, intrigued. If I did, would you teach me Fuinjutsu? Naruto extended his hand, his usual grin in place. Deal. Ino pouted, only half joking. No fair, Naruto-kun. You never offered to teach me Fuinjutsu. Naruto blinked in confusion. You never asked, Ino-chan. Before Ino could reply, Hinata, with her quiet confidence, added, besides, with your extra training, you'll be too busy to worry about learning Fuinjutsu. Her eyes sparkled with mischievous amusement, and Ino's blush returned full force. How did you? Hinata simply smiled, the playful expression on her face making Ino feel slightly unnerved. She hadn't expected Hinata of all people to know about her desperate plea to Asuma-sensei, much less bring it up so casually. The rest of the evening passed without incident, filled with laughter and conversation. Eventually, Naruto and Haku stood to leave, thanking Hinata for hosting them and saying their goodbyes to Ino as well. After they left, the air between Hinata and Ino shifted slightly, both girls feeling the need to clear the air. Ino-chan, Hinata began, her tone calm but serious. I know I may come across as overprotective when it comes to Naruto-kun, but he's my best friend. He's helped me in ways I can never fully repay. When you joke about him not giving you something, it makes him think he's missed something important, something a normal person would have noticed. I won't let you make him doubt himself. Ino sighed, understanding dawning on her. She hadn't thought about it from that perspective, but Hinata was right. You're right. I didn't realize my teasing could hurt him. I didn't mean to be insensitive. I really do consider Naruto a friend. Hinata's serious expression softened. Then maybe we can be friends too, Ino-chan. Ino grinned. As long as you stop scaring the crap out of me, I think we can manage that. Hinata giggled, her usual warmth returning. I'll try. As they parted ways for the evening, Ino couldn't help but smile to herself. It seemed that in addition to gaining Naruto as a friend, she might just be gaining Hinata as one too. The prospect brightened her mood as she made her way home, excited at the idea of having another female friend again. It had been a while since she'd had that kind of connection, not since her falling out with Sakura. But maybe things were beginning to change. Tenzo, ever watchful, stood silently observing the sparring match unfolding before him. It brought back memories of his own rigorous training, the intensity of sparring with fellow ANBU, the constant drive to push beyond limits. He couldn't help but smile at the scene before him. Naruto and Sai, two boys trained in different ways, were locked in a fearsome dance of fists and kicks, their movements fluid and precise. What made it all the more impressive was the level of trust between them. Each strike was powerful, each dodge executed with the narrowest of margins, yet there was a clear understanding between them. They were there to push one another, not to cause serious harm. Naruto had improved drastically, Tenzo noted, even with his resistance seals still active. The seals were designed to limit Naruto's chakra and physical output, forcing him to grow stronger in a controlled way. Sai, ever the enigma due to his training under Danzo, was a challenge to read fully. But the way Naruto was holding his own, despite the constraints, was a testament to his progress. The fight reached a momentary crescendo when Sai landed a solid right hook, sending Naruto tumbling backward. Not wasting any time, Sai charged forward, aiming to press his advantage. But Naruto was ready. He narrowly dodged Sai's kick, responding with a quick spin and a counterattack, catching Sai off guard with a clean hit to the chin. Sai stumbled back, but recovered quickly, only to be met with Naruto's next attack, a flying stomp aimed at pinning him down. Sai rolled out of the way, grabbed a kunai, and launched himself back into the fray. The boys continued their deadly ballet, sparks flying as their kunai clashed. Naruto, ever the improviser, suddenly flipped over Sai, placing both hands on the other boy's shoulders as he vaulted behind him. In a fluid motion, he mule-kicked Sai forward, but Sai regained his balance quickly and flipped over Naruto in turn, landing a hit on Naruto's face. The spar escalated into a series of complex attacks and counters, until Sai, in a final burst of speed, struck Naruto in the solar plexus and followed it up with a kick to the midsection. Naruto crumpled, Sai standing over him with his kunai pointed at the downed boy. But there was no animosity, just a silent acknowledgement of the outcome. Naruto gave a nod of defeat, and Sai extended a hand to help him up. They made the seal of reconciliation, then flopped down on the ground, exhausted but content. Kakashi, who had been watching the match from beside Tenzo, flipped a page in his book, though his attention was clearly on the fight. "Do they normally go that hard?" he asked, his casual tone betraying his curiosity. Tenzo nodded. "It's been escalating ever since Naruto started improving." "Are you concerned?" Kakashi glanced up, his one visible eye thoughtful. "Not about Naruto's safety. If the Sandaime ordered you here, I trust he's fine. But I didn't expect him to be this good at taijutsu. He surpassed what I thought possible in such a short time." Tenzo shrugged slightly. "They push each other. It's been good for both of them." Kakashi hummed in response. "And now?" "Well, that depends. Sometimes they focus on ninjutsu, other times they discuss strategy, or even form a book club, of all things. They have a surprising amount of downtime for reflection." As Tenzo spoke, he sensed a presence approaching, a quiet one, but not quite quiet enough to evade his ANBU-trained senses. He turned to see Haku walking toward them, holding a snow rabbit in her arms. She looked serene, dressed in a dark blue shirt and matching skirt. Her calm presence was a stark contrast to the intensity of the spar that had just ended. "Good morning, Naruto." "And Sai, I presume?" Haku greeted, her soft voice carrying over the field. "Good morning, Haku," Naruto replied, pushing himself up from the ground. "Hello, Haku-san," Sai added, standing as well. "Naruto spoke of you briefly, but you are not what I expected." Haku raised an eyebrow, smiling faintly. "Oh? I hope I haven't disappointed." Sai, ever blunt, shook his head. "No, not disappointed. It's just, with Hinata-san, Shizen-san, and Tsunade-sama, I assumed Naruto preferred his women, bustier." The silence that followed was palpable. Haku's expression shifted, her smile disappearing as her hand flicked out with practiced ease, sending several senbon flying into Sai's legs. He collapsed, paralyzed but unharmed. Her frown was offset by a light blush that crept up her cheeks. "I suppose that was something I shouldn't have said," Sai admitted from his position on the ground. Naruto sighed, nodding in agreement as he crouched down to pull the senbon from Sai's legs. "Yeah, probably not." Then, as if the moment couldn't get any more awkward, Naruto said with complete sincerity, "Besides, I like Haku's breasts." Haku's blush deepened, and though Naruto didn't see it, Tenzo was fairly certain he could hear stifled laughter coming from Kakashi behind his book. Naruto, oblivious to the reaction, carefully removed the remaining senbon and helped Sai back up. "I hope this doesn't become a repeat occurrence," he muttered to himself. Later, in the Hokage's office, Hiruzen Sarutobi studied Naruto with a thoughtful expression. Naruto had come to him for advice on something the old man knew well, teaching. Naruto explained how Haku had asked to be his assistant, as well as a reservist in the ninja corps. In exchange, she wanted him to teach her Fuinjutsu. Hiruzen listened carefully, feeling a swell of pride for his grandson's growing sense of responsibility, but also a hint of apprehension. Teaching, Hiruzen began slowly, stroking his beard, is one of the most difficult yet rewarding tasks you can take on. It requires patience, insight, and most importantly, adaptability. You may find that because you understand Fuinjutsu so well, it might be difficult for you to teach it. The areas where you excel could be where others struggle, and that's not always easy to recognize. Naruto frowned slightly, absorbing the information. So what do I do? Communicate, Hiruzen said simply. Explain things as clearly as you can, but more importantly, listen to how Haku understands it. What you teach and what she learns might be different, and it's your job to find that gap. Be patient with her and with yourself. And if you ever run into trouble, you can come to me for advice. Or seek out Jiraiya or Tsunade, they've taught some of the most difficult disciplines imaginable. Or Hatake-sensei? Naruto asked, his tone suggesting that Kakashi wasn't his first choice for guidance. Hiruzen chuckled. Yes, even Kakashi. The old Hokage looked at Naruto with fondness. Now, how is your other project coming along? Naruto's expression darkened slightly. Not well, he admitted. Even with Tsunade's help, we haven't been able to figure out a counteragent for the compound in Anko's seal. Hiruzen nodded, his eyes sympathetic. Keep at it, Naruto-kun. I know you want to help Anko, but remember not to burn yourself out in the process. I'll try, Aji-san. Good. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair, a small smile on his face. Now, as you know, you'll be touring the facility that makes your Fuin bracelets at the end of the week. The rest of your team will be on a C-rank mission during that time, but I've assigned a special jounin to escort you. Naruto nodded. He had requested to see the facility, wanting to make updates to the security systems they used. Hiruzen, seeing his enthusiasm, had agreed. Though he had considered sending Jiraiya along, the Toad Sage was currently gathering intelligence elsewhere. Besides, Hiruzen had noticed some tension between his student and his grandson and thought a little space might do them both good. With a final nod, Naruto said his goodbyes and left the office, heading for Ichiraku Ramen. Kakashi had given him a few days off to focus on Sasuke and Sakura, but Naruto didn't mind. He had plenty of people to train with, and he appreciated the break. When he arrived at the ramen stand, he spotted Haku already sitting there, waiting for him. Hello, Haku. Sorry if I'm late, he said as he slid into the seat beside her. Haku smiled warmly. Hi, Naruto-kun. You're not late. I'm just early. As Naruto settled in, Ayam, the daughter of the ramen chef, bounced over with a wide smile. Welcome, Naruto-kun. What'll it be today? Hello, Ayam-san, Naruto began, only to be interrupted as Ayam reached across the counter, grabbing his cheeks and pulling them apart with playful scolding. Ayam Nichan, she corrected with exaggerated patience. Naruto, cheeks stretched comically, sighed. Hi, Ayam Nichan. Good, she said, releasing him with a grin. Now, what'll you have? The usual, Naruto muttered, rubbing his sore cheeks. Haku giggled softly beside him, amused by the exchange. It was rare to see Naruto in such a childlike moment, and she found it endearing. It reminded her that despite everything he'd gone through, he was still just a 12-year-old boy in many ways. As they waited for their food, the two chatted easily, the comfort of their friendship growing with each passing day. For now, Naruto could set aside the weight of his responsibilities and enjoy the simple things, a meal with a friend, a moment of peace, and the warmth of being treated like a normal kid. Tsunade entered her office, her thoughts swirling after yet another intense therapy session. Each one seemed to peel back a new layer of her grief and guilt, emotions she had buried so deep they had become part of her identity. She sighed, rubbing her temples as she closed the door behind her. The process of healing, of really confronting the scars left by her past, was exhausting, but necessary. The regret of not starting this sooner weighed heavily on her. How many years had she spent running, avoiding the pain, pretending that gambling, drinking, and a false sense of bravado were enough to cover the cracks in her soul. The deaths of Dan and Nawaki had been the catalyst for her downfall, but in these sessions, she was beginning to understand that her grief went far deeper. It wasn't just about losing them, it was the weight of countless lives she had taken in the wars, the endless cycle of death she had contributed to. The irony of being celebrated as the greatest medic of her time while being responsible for so much destruction wasn't lost on her. How many lovers, siblings, and parents had she sent to early graves with her skill in combat? How many people had she indirectly driven to drown their sorrows in alcohol, just as she had? Tsunade had lived in this contradictory space for so long, healer and killer, savior and destroyer, that it felt impossible to reconcile the two. But now, slowly, she was beginning to make peace with those warring parts of herself. It wasn't fast, and it wasn't easy. Healing the mind never happened instantly. But she could feel the difference already, the faintest glimmer of hope that maybe she could be whole again, that she could accept all parts of herself, both the good and the bad. Sitting down at her desk, Tsunade breathed deeply and got to work. She was thankful that her current workload was nowhere near as crushing as her old sensei's had been when he was Hokage. The paperwork was steady but manageable. She sifted through budget reports, preliminary plans for the new medic training program, and security clearance updates for her staff. The progress was slow, but she was determined to bring the medical corps the respect and resources they deserved. So much of the village's focus had always been on Jounin and Anbu, but Tsunade knew firsthand how critical skilled medics were to Konoha's success. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called, her voice a bit softer than usual. The door opened, and Shizun stepped inside, smiling warmly. Taunton, her loyal pig, trotted in after her, oinking happily as they made their way to the desk. "I thought you might want some tea before you dive into everything," Shizun said, placing a steaming mug down in front of Tsunade. "Thank you, Shizun," Tsunade replied, her smile warming as she looked at her ever-dependable student. "Oink!" Taunton chimed in, as if reminding Tsunade of her presence. "And thank you too, Taunton," Tsunade added with a laugh, reaching down to scratch the pig behind the ears. Shizun sat down across from her, the air between them comfortable and familiar. "How was your session today?" she asked gently. Tsunade took a slow sip of her tea, letting the warmth settle her nerves. "It was hard, but good," she admitted, her voice quieter than usual. "I just keep thinking about how different things could have been if I'd started doing this sooner. I could have avoided so much." She waved a hand vaguely, encompassing the years of running and self-destructive behavior. Shizun gave her a kind smile, one full of understanding. "Things can be different now. That's what I try to focus on." Tsunade chuckled, appreciating Shizun's optimism. "That's very wise, Shizun. When did you get so insightful?" Shizun grinned. "I had a good teacher. She showed me what not to do." Tsunade rolled her eyes, but there was a lightness in her expression that hadn't been there earlier. "Har har. Keep that up, and I might start telling people how you cried when you couldn't revive that fish in the pond." Shizun's eyes widened in horror. "Tsunade-sama, that's not true." Tsunade shrugged, the beginnings of a mischievous smirk playing at her lips. "Doesn't have to be true to be believed." The dangerous glint in Shizun's eyes gave Tsunade pause. Her student rarely played dirty, but Tsunade could see she was ready to retaliate this time. "If you do that," Shizun said sweetly, her voice laced with a hint of menace, "I'll tell everyone you've started reading Ika Ika." Tsunade's eyes widened in mock outrage. "You wouldn't." "I would, Tsunade-sama." The two women stared each other down, but Tsunade could see that Shizun wasn't backing down from this one. After a long moment, Tsunade huffed in defeat. "Fine, fine. But one day, I will find some legitimate blackmail material on you," she threatened playfully. Shizun laughed, the sound light and free as she stood up. "Good luck with that, Tsunade-sama," she said, giving a mock bow before making her way out of the office, Taunton following happily behind. Tsunade watched her go, shaking her head with a fond smile. Having dirt on a sannin is dangerous, she muttered to herself, returning to her paperwork. But there was no malice in her thoughts, just the warmth of knowing she had someone who could stand up to her, who cared about her, and who could make her laugh, even when the weight of her past seemed too heavy to bear. As she picked up her pen and resumed her work, Tsunade felt lighter than she had in years. Healing might be slow, but for the first time in a long while, it felt possible. And for that, she was grateful. "They don't look like much," Tenten observed dryly as she watched Sakura and Sasuke go through their morning training routine. Her tone was light, but there was an undercurrent of critical evaluation behind her words. Kakashi, ever casual, flipped a page in his book and smiled under his mask. Tenten-chan, they're still fresh. Remember when you were just a few months out of the academy yourself?" he asked, his voice lazy but friendly. He didn't expect an answer. He was well aware of Tenten's disciplined work ethic and rapid rise in skill since her genin days. Kakashi had requested a replacement for Naruto on their upcoming C-rank mission, and Guy, always eager to lend a hand, or outdo his rival, had offered his sole kunoichi, Tenten, to fill the gap. Kakashi appreciated her presence. She was competent, level-headed, and well-trained, a welcome balance to the unpredictability of his usual team. Sakura, however, wasn't as welcoming. Who the hell are you?" she blurted out, her temper flaring as she turned toward the older girl. Tenten didn't seem fazed by the outburst. She raised an eyebrow at the pink-haired kunoichi. "Tenten, member of Team 9 and future weapons mistress. I'm a little offended you don't know me. Your teammate has been offering to bed me for months but hasn't even mentioned me. I feel unappreciated." Sakura's eyes widened, her mind scrambling to process the unexpected response, while Sasuke's reaction was, predictably, blunt. "Kakashi, why is she here?" Sasuke asked, not bothering with pleasantries as he cut straight to the point. Kakashi, as laid back as ever, didn't look up from his book. "We'll be taking another C-rank at the end of the week, but Naruto won't be joining us. Tenten-chan will be filling in for him. She'll train with us for a few days so we can all get to know each other." Sasuke grunted, his default response to most things. He turned his gaze back to Tenten, sizing her up with a critical eye. Tenten narrowed her eyes, unimpressed. "What does even mean?" she asked, her tone exasperated. "I already have one pretty boy prodigy on my team. I'm not about to learn a whole new language just for you. Use actual words." Sasuke was surprised, if only for a moment, that a girl his age had the audacity to talk back to him. Most girls in the village either fawned over him or avoided him altogether, but Tenten? She didn't seem to care. And Sasuke didn't like it. "I don't take orders from second-rate kunoichi," he said coldly, his pride already prickling at her tone. The words had barely left his mouth before something whizzed past his cheek. A kunai embedded itself in the tree behind him with a solid thud, and Sasuke felt a cool sting where it had grazed his skin. His hand instinctively went to his cheek, feeling the small cut that had appeared. When he turned back to face Tenten, she stood calmly, more kunai in hand, her expression unreadable. "I don't take crap from rookies," she said smoothly, a smirk forming on her lips, especially from those who aren't even the strongest on their team. Sasuke's scowl deepened, and before Kakashi could react, the Uchiha charged at her. Tenten remained cool and focused. She was no stranger to sparring with prideful prodigies like Neji, and she saw the same fire in Sasuke's eyes. She was prepared. Kakashi, standing a few feet away, didn't interfere. He wasn't worried. Tenten was more than capable of defending herself, and he had no doubt that this little clash would be more beneficial for Sasuke in the long run than any reprimand. So, he let them hash it out, ready to step in if things went too far, but otherwise content to return to his book. Sasuke came at 10-10 with speed and precision, aiming to close the gap between them quickly. But 10-10 didn't give him the chance. With a fluid motion, she threw a handful of kunai, forcing Sasuke to sidestep and retreat. She followed up immediately, keeping him at bay with a barrage of shuriken and expertly placed traps. Every time Sasuke thought he'd found an opening, 10-10 was already a step ahead, her weapons cutting him off before he could get close enough to land a hit. Sasuke gritted his teeth, frustration mounting. He had faced long-range fighters before, but 10-10's control over the battlefield was on another level. It felt like every move he made, she had anticipated it, her weapons appearing out of nowhere to intercept his attacks. Small nicks and cuts began to appear on his arms and legs, the sting of each one fueling his irritation. A minute into their impromptu spar, Sasuke realized he wasn't going to win this fight, not without escalating things. He considered using his fire jutsu to overwhelm her, to teach her a lesson. But after a moment of hesitation, he stopped himself. As much as he hated to admit it, he had insulted her first. And despite his frustration, she had proven herself. "I give." "You win," Sasuke said, his voice grudging but clear. He stood tall, brushing off the lingering sting of his minor injuries. "I'm sorry for insulting you." 10-10 nodded in acknowledgement, her expression neutral. She didn't gloat or rub it in his face. Apology accepted. She retracted her weapons, satisfied. Kakashi finally looked up from his book, smiling underneath his mask. "That was quite the display. Looks like we'll need to work on how you deal with long-range opponents, Sasuke-kun." Sasuke nodded, still processing the defeat as he wiped some blood from his cheek. "Now," Kakashi continued, "patch yourself up and take a short break. We'll start team training in 10 minutes. With that, Kakashi returned to his book, the underlying message clear: there was always something to learn, even from a loss. Sakura, who had been watching the exchange in silence, still seemed a little rattled. She glanced between Sasuke and 10-10, unsure of what to make of the new dynamic. 10-10, for her part, simply smirked and began casually sharpening one of her kunai, clearly unfazed by the whole ordeal. As Sasuke moved to tend to his cuts, 10-10 looked over at him. "You're not bad," she said, tossing a kunai up and catching it with practiced ease. "But next time, try to keep your temper in check. You'll do better." Sasuke, surprisingly, nodded, a small flicker of respect forming in his gaze. He didn't say anything in response, but 10-10's words stuck with him. Maybe there was more to this weapons mistress than he had initially given her credit for. As the team prepared for the next part of their training, Kakashi allowed himself a rare moment of contentment. 10-10 had handled herself well, and Sasuke had learned an important lesson. This mission might just go smoother than he'd thought. At least, he hoped so. Haku marveled at the sheer amount of ramen Naruto had managed to consume at the small stand, though it didn't seem to surprise anyone else. Tucci, and even the regulars didn't bat an eye at the spectacle. It was clearly a normal occurrence for them. After settling the tab and ensuring he addressed properly this time to avoid any further cheek pinching, Naruto led Haku away from the stand, guiding her to his favorite training ground. They walked in a comfortable silence, with Haku observing the streets of Konoha around her. It was peaceful, but something gnawed at the edge of her senses. She couldn't quite place it, but she had the distinct feeling they were being watched. Years spent as Zabuza's apprentice had sharpened her instincts, and she knew better than to ignore them. Her unease grew until she caught sight of 3 small figures rapidly approaching them, their excitement clear even from a distance. Naruto noticed too. With quick reflexes, he created 2 clones and effortlessly caught the oncoming projectiles, Konohamaru and his 2 friends, before setting them onto his back for piggyback rides. "Ni-chan!" Konohamaru cheered excitedly as he clung to Naruto. Boss, chorused Moegi and Udon, the other two children beaming with joy. Naruto grinned. Haku, this is Konoha, and these are his friends, Moegi and Udon, he introduced. You three, say hello to Haku. The trio turned to Haku and, in perfect unison, greeted her, Hi, Haku-san. Haku smiled warmly at the enthusiastic children. Oh, so you're the notorious prankster trio, she said, teasing lightly. Naruto-kun has told me all about your exploits. The three children blushed, looking proud but embarrassed to hear that Naruto spoke of them. You talk about us, Nai-chan? Konoha asked, his eyes wide with wonder. Naruto nodded as his clones carried on the piggyback ride toward the training grounds. Of course. But what are you three doing here? Shouldn't you be at the academy? We didn't have class today, Konoha answered quickly. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You know I'll check with Irika-sensei, right? Konoha pouted. Hi. I wouldn't lie to you, again. He hesitated, recalling the one time he'd fibbed to Naruto. The memory of how sternly Naruto had dealt with him afterward was enough to make him swear never to do it again. Besides, I never get to see you anymore. Naruto sighed. I send a clone for you regularly, Kono-chan. It's not the same. Konoha protested, hugging Naruto's neck tightly. I want you, not a clone. I'll keep that in mind, Naruto said, giving the boy an affectionate pat on the head. So, what are you going to teach us today, Nai-chan? Moegi piped up, her eager eyes shining with curiosity. Naruto shook his head. Sorry, I have plans with Haku today. I can't teach you anything this time. All three children immediately pouted, their enthusiasm quickly turning into disappointment. Haku, seeing their sad expressions, offered a suggestion. Perhaps they could join us for the basics? It wouldn't hurt to let them observe or participate a little. Naruto glanced at her, considering the idea. I suppose I could. But, he said, turning to the kids, if I'm going to teach you three anything about Fuinjutsu, you have to promise me something. Anything. Konoha said, speaking for the group. You need to practice your calligraphy every day, Naruto said, his tone serious. And you can't set off a seal without letting me check it over first. The three of them nodded vigorously. Deal. Konoha said eagerly. Naruto grinned. Alright, hold on tight. With that, the three Narutos and Haku disappeared in a blur, using Shunshin to reach the training ground in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, Team 10 was returning from their latest C-rank mission. The assignment had been fairly straightforward, track down the bandits who had been ambushing messengers from a private delivery service. The mission hadn't gone entirely as expected, though. The enemy had been far more prepared than they thought, likely tipped off in advance. While Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji had handled themselves well enough, it was Asuma who had done most of the heavy lifting, taking out the bulk of the bandits with his knuckle knives. Now, as they walked through the village streets, Ino was pestering Asuma with renewed energy. You have to teach me how to use those, Ino begged, her eyes locked on Asuma's knuckle knives as they glinted in the afternoon sun. Asuma rolled his eyes. I ain't gotta do nothing, he replied, taking a long drag from his cigarette. Please? Ino whined, refusing to let the matter drop. No. Ino groaned in frustration before turning to her teammates for backup. Guys, help me out here. Shikamaru, true to form, stuffed his hands in his pockets and let out a tired sigh. Troublesome. I want no part in this. Choji, however, was more sympathetic. I don't see the harm, Asuma-sensei, he said through a mouthful of chips. Ino pointed triumphantly. See? Choji's on my side. Asuma didn't even bother to look up from his cigarette. Yeah, don't care. You don't need these. Besides, it's highly unlikely you have a wind or lightning affinity. Knuckle knives won't do much for you without the right chakra nature. Ino clenched her fists, clearly frustrated. So what? She exclaimed, her voice rising with her annoyance. I don't have any offensive or defensive ninjutsu yet. My taijutsu's getting better, but this would really help me improve. Asuma, recognizing the determination in her voice, finally relented enough to offer a measured response. Ino, there's no need to rush. You've got talent, but you need to firm up your basics first. You start adding on too many things at once, and it'll slow you down in the long run. Ino opened her mouth to argue, but stopped herself, realizing he had a point. Still, she wasn't about to give up so easily. She wanted to be stronger, needed to be stronger. After a moment of silence, an idea sparked in her mind. She grinned, eyes gleaming with mischief. How about a bet? Asuma raised an eyebrow. A bet? Yep, Ino said confidently. If, in our next training session, I can beat both Shikamaru and Choji at the same time, you teach me how to use the knives. Shikamaru, hearing this, groaned. I have no incentive to participate in this. Ino crossed her arms and shot him a sideways glare. Oh, you think I'm troublesome now, Shika? Wait until I try. Shikamaru winced, knowing full well what she was capable of when determined. What a drag, he muttered under his breath. Choji, on the other hand, didn't mind. I'll do it, he said with a grin, clearly enjoying the idea. Just buy me some barbecue, and I'm good. Asuma chuckled, amused by the dynamics of his team. Alright, fine. And if you lose, Ino? Ino paused, considering what to offer in return. What do you want? You have to clean my apartment for a month, laundry included. Ino's eye twitched. What? Asuma grinned. You want the knives, right? That's my price. Ino narrowed her eyes but eventually nodded. Fine. Deal. Asuma clapped his hands together. Good. Now get ready. You've got some training to do if you're going to pull this off. As the team headed back to the village, Ino began plotting strategies in her mind. She knew it wouldn't be easy to take down Shikamaru's genius and Choji's raw strength, but if she could pull it off, she'd finally have something of her own. Those knuckle knives could give her the edge she needed. She just had to figure out how to make it work. For now, though, she was content to focus on her next challenge. It was going to be a tough fight, but one thing was for sure, Ino Yamanaka wasn't going to back down. Naruto's mind was still processing Haku's earlier words as he made his way back to his apartment after their training session. The idea of leaving a legacy through teaching, of passing on skills that would continue to shape the future long after you were gone, struck a chord deep within him. He had always dreamed of becoming Hokage, believing it was the ultimate way to leave his mark on the village. But now, through Haku's insight, he was beginning to see that the small, personal connections, teaching Konohamaru, or even Haku herself, could have just as profound an impact. It was a humbling thought, one that made him smile. He was still mulling over the concept when his peaceful walk was interrupted by a message from Hinata. Ino, it seemed, had gotten herself into a bit of a predicament, and Hinata thought Naruto might be able to help. Without hesitation, Naruto made his way to the Yamanaka compound, eager to see what the situation was. As Naruto arrived at the Yamanaka home, he was met with a stern gaze from Ino's father, Yamanaka Inoichi. The older man, the head of Konoha's intelligence division, was clearly not thrilled to see the Uzumaki standing on his doorstep. Inoichi's green eyes narrowed as he sized up the boy, his expression cold and unreadable. Naruto, however, wasn't the least bit fazed. He stared back at Inoichi with his usual blank expression, waiting for him to speak. After a moment of tense silence, Inoichi finally asked, "What are you doing here, Uzumaki?" Naruto didn't miss a beat. I'm here for your daughter, Yamanaka Inoichi-san. Inoichi's eyes darkened further. Oh, and would you like to pay a visit to my wife after you finish up with Ino? He asked sarcastically. Naruto blinked, considering the offer with genuine confusion, wondering if Mrs. Yamanaka had a sealing or medical-related need. He had no time to respond, however, before walking past Inoichi and heading upstairs to where Ino and Hinata were waiting. Inoichi watched him go, shaking his head in frustration. Ino is in her room. Upstairs and to the left, he called after him, begrudgingly offering directions. Naruto, as usual, gave a polite nod of acknowledgement. Thank you, Yamanaka-san. When he reached Ino's door, he knocked lightly. The door swung open almost immediately, and before Naruto could even greet her, Ino yanked him inside with surprising strength, depositing him onto her bed. Hinata, sitting nearby, offered Naruto a small smile, though it wasn't her usual warm expression, it was more amused, as if she knew something Naruto didn't. Ino was practically vibrating with nervous energy, her frantic expression betraying the fact that she was clearly stressed about something. I'm so glad you're here, Naruto-kun. I need your help, and Hinata-chan said you could provide it. I said Naruto-kun might have an idea to help you, Hinata corrected gently. Since it's your mouth that got you in trouble, Ino-chan. Ino waved the correction off, dismissing it entirely. Same difference, she muttered before turning back to Naruto, her expression full of desperation. You're my only hope. Hinata stared at her blankly, her patience running thin. Naruto, on the other hand, simply sat in silence. By now, Ino had grown used to Naruto's communication style. He didn't often say much when it wasn't necessary, especially when it came to helping his friends. His presence alone was usually enough to signal his willingness to assist, and that was exactly what it meant now. Realizing that Naruto was waiting for her to explain the situation, Ino quickly launched into her story. Okay, so here's the problem. During our last mission, I saw Asuma-sensei using these amazing knuckle knives, and it looked so cool. So, naturally, I begged him to teach me how to use them. She paused, sighing dramatically. But of course, he refused. Said I wasn't ready or whatever, and, ugh, it's so annoying because even Forehead Girl might be getting stronger than me now since she's training with you, right? Naruto's expression didn't change, but his answer was calm and factual. Sakura-san's rate of progress has been within the range of expectation. See? That's totally Naruto-kun speak for, that walking billboard is getting stronger. I just want an edge, you know? Something that'll make me stand out. Those knives would be perfect for my taijutsu. These are all good points, Ino-chan, Naruto replied, nodding thoughtfully. But I'm not sure how I can convince Asuma-san to train you. Oh, that's not the problem, Ino said quickly, waving off the concern. I challenged Asuma-sensei. I told him if I could beat both Shikamaru and Choji at the same time, he'd have to train me, and he agreed. The problem is, she continued, her voice dropping, Shikamaru is too smart. And Choji, he's a tank. I could wail on him all day and it wouldn't make a difference. How am I supposed to beat both of them? I was hoping you'd have some advice, or maybe a super seal that would give me the edge. Naruto considered her words for a moment before responding. When is your challenge? In 3 days. Asuma-sensei gave us 2 days off, and then we're supposed to settle the bet when we return. Naruto nodded, then answered in his usual straightforward way. I'll help you. Ino's face lit up in excitement, but before she could cheer, Naruto added, but I won't give you any seals. Ino deflated immediately. What? Why not? She whined. You could totally trap them in a seal or something. It'd be easy. Possibly, Naruto replied evenly. But this is not my challenge, Ino-chan, it's yours. You want to get stronger, right? It wouldn't be right for me to win the fight for you. This is your chance to improve, and I wouldn't be a good friend if I took that away from you. Ino wanted to argue, to beg for some kind of shortcut, but one glance at Hinata's knowing expression stopped her. The slight, smug smile on the Hyuga's face made it clear that Hinata had known Naruto would say no. You knew he wouldn't help me like that, didn't you? Ino accused, her voice tinged with frustration. Yes, Hinata said, her tone calm but firm. But that doesn't mean we can't help you, Ino-chan. We just won't solve the problem for you. Ino huffed, feeling a bit foolish. Fine. What can I do, then? Naruto leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. What are the rules of the challenge? Ino blinked, realizing she hadn't thought much about that. Just standard sparring rules, I guess. Asuma-sensei didn't say anything specific. Naruto nodded. Okay. Then the challenge has already started. Ino furrowed her brow in confusion. No, Naruto-kun, the fight is on Friday. Naruto shook his head. No, Ino-chan. You only have to appear to win on Friday. That doesn't mean you can't start taking steps to secure your victory now. Ideally, both Shikamaru and Choji should be doing the same. But, it's just a spar, Ino said, still not fully grasping his meaning. No, Ino-chan, Naruto said patiently, it's an assassination mission. Your objective is to make the client, Asuma-sensei, see you succeed at a specific time. But that doesn't mean you can't prepare beforehand. Ino gaped at him, her mind reeling. The way Naruto framed it, the whole concept of the challenge changed. She wasn't just showing up for a friendly spar, she was in a mission mindset. She realized how linear her thinking had been. While she was focused on winning the day of the spar, Naruto was already planning how to win the entire challenge, starting now. She felt small, suddenly realizing how naive her approach had been. If she really wanted to grow as a shinobi, she had to stop thinking like a student in the academy. This wasn't just about showing up on the day of the fight, it was about using every resource available to her, before the fight, to secure her victory. Ino let out a frustrated sigh, feeling a wave of embarrassment wash over her. She had been so immature. No wonder Asuma didn't take her seriously. Naruto, sensing her distress, frowned. I didn't mean to make you feel bad, Ino-chan. It's not you, Ino muttered, hanging her head. It's me. I've been stupid about this. Suddenly, she felt a pair of arms gently wrap around her, and she looked up to see Hinata hugging her. It's okay, Ino-chan. You're learning. We're all still figuring things out. Naruto, not wanting Ino to feel worse, nodded. You haven't done anything wrong, Ino-chan. But I'll help you. We can come up with a plan. Ino, grateful for her friend's support, finally smiled. Thanks. Let's get started. For the next 20 minutes, the trio brainstormed strategies, with Naruto and Hinata offering suggestions while Ino formulated a plan. The discussion was intense but productive, and slowly, Ino began to regain her confidence. However, their quiet planning was suddenly interrupted by the sound of heavy footsteps. Moments later, Inoichi burst into the room, his face red with fury and his breath coming in angry huffs. Get out, you damn brat, he bellowed at Naruto, his voice echoing off the walls. Get out right now. Daddy? Ino exclaimed, jumping to her feet in shock. What are you yelling about? He was in my bedroom. Inoichi shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at Naruto. With your mother. Ino and Hinata both turned to look at Naruto, who remained completely unfazed, his expression calm as ever. Seeing the confusion on their faces, Naruto began to explain. When Naruto had reached the top of the stairs earlier, he had remembered Inoichi's sarcastic remark about his wife. Not wanting to delay if Mrs. Yamanaka needed help, Naruto had quickly created a shadow clone and sent it toward Inoichi's bedroom while he continued on to meet Ino. The clone had reached the bedroom door and knocked politely. "Why yes," came the pained reply from inside. "Hello, Yamanaka-san," the clone said. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto, and Inoichi-san asked me to come see you." "Oh, then come in," she responded, her voice strained. Upon entering, Naruto's clone saw Mrs. Yamanaka lying in bed, clearly in discomfort. The room was dimly lit, but it didn't take long for him to assess the situation. "As I said, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, currently a C-rank medical ninja," he explained calmly. "Can you tell me what seems to be bothering you, Yamanaka-san?" "Imiko, dear," she corrected with a small smile. "And it's my back. I was bending down to pick something up, and I felt this sharp pain in my lower right side. It's been agony for days now." Naruto quickly activated his diagnostic jutsu and confirmed his suspicion. "You've herniated a disc in your lower back, Imiko-san." "Oh," she said with a wince. "Can you do anything for it?" "Yes," Naruto replied confidently. "It's not severe enough for surgery, so I can help. But I'll need you to roll onto your stomach so I can begin treatment." With Naruto's help, Mrs. Yamanaka repositioned herself, though the movement caused her some discomfort. After lifting her nightgown slightly to expose her lower back, Naruto began healing the herniated disc using a basic medical jutsu. As he worked, he explained the process. "The muscles in your back have tightened from being immobile, which is why you've been feeling so stiff. I'll work on relaxing them after the disc is healed." After about 10 minutes, the disc was repaired, and Naruto began massaging her lower back to relieve the tension in her muscles. His hands moved carefully, kneading out the knots, and Mrs. Yamanaka let out small sounds of relief as the pain subsided. "Ah, yes, right there, Naruto-kun," she said with a contented sigh. "Don't be shy." That was the moment when Inoichi, thinking the worst, had stormed into the bedroom, only to find Naruto mid-massage. The sight, combined with his wife's pleased tone, had sent the man into a fury. Back in Ino's room, Naruto finished recounting the events with his usual neutral tone. Ino, who had listened in stunned silence, suddenly burst out laughing, while Hinata simply blinked in surprise. Inoichi, still red-faced, crossed his arms and huffed. "Well, it sounded compromising." "Daddy," Ino said through her giggles, "Naruto was just helping. He's a trained medic, remember?" Inoichi grumbled under his breath, clearly not happy about the misunderstanding. "Still." Imiko's voice echoed from the hallway. "Inoichi-kun. You owe that boy an apology. He helped me when you wouldn't let me go to the hospital." Inoichi let out a long, suffering sigh before finally muttering, "Thank you, Naruto." Naruto blinked, offering a nod. "You're welcome, Yamanaka-san." As the tension in the room began to ease, Inoichi gave Naruto one last look before retreating from the room, mumbling something about keeping an eye on the boy. Ino, still amused, turned to Naruto. "Well, that was an adventure. You really are full of surprises, Naruto-kun." Naruto, nonplussed, just shrugged. "It's what I do." With that, the trio returned to their planning, the odd encounter with Ino's father only adding to the strange but productive day. Naruto walked Hinata home in a quiet, companionable silence after the encounter at the Yamanaka household. His thoughts wandered to Inoichi's sudden outburst and Imiko-san's herniated disc, but mostly, he was replaying Haku's words about legacy in his mind. It was a new way of thinking for him, how teaching others meant leaving a part of yourself behind in those you train. He liked the idea, even if he was still wrapping his head around it. As they turned onto the final street leading to the Hyuga compound, Hinata suddenly broke the silence. "Naruto-kun?" "Yes, Hinata-chan." Naruto replied, looking over at her as they approached the tall gates of the Hyuga estate. "It was really nice of you to help Imiko-san like that," she began, her voice soft and sincere. But you shouldn't give your services away for free. You're a medical ninja now, and your skills have value. Naruto tilted his head in thought, his expression calm. Then, a small smile appeared on his face. In a way, she did pay me. Hinata blinked, confused. Oh? And what's your going rate? She asked with a playful tone, a small smile tugging at her lips. Naruto's smile widened slightly as he answered, she let me see her panties. Hinata froze in place, right at the gates of the Hyuga compound. The guards standing at attention hesitated, unsure if they should greet their heiress as she stood there, her face shifting through a range of emotions. Naruto, meanwhile, just looked at her with his usual innocence, oblivious to the deeper implications of his words. For a moment, Hinata didn't move, and Naruto thought she might be mad or embarrassed. But then, her expression settled into one of quiet resolve. Without missing a beat, she leaned close to Naruto, her lips brushing his ear as she whispered in a low, teasing voice, "That might be a problem if I ever need your medical skills, Naruto-kun." Naruto blinked, confused. Why? Hinata, her face completely composed, gave him a sweet smile and whispered, "Because I don't wear any." Naruto's brain momentarily short-circuited as Hinata calmly turned on her heels and gracefully entered the Hyuga compound. The guards, who had been silently observing the interaction, were left standing at the gates, looking mildly concerned as Naruto remained rooted to the spot, his blue eyes half-lidded as if his mind was far, far away. "Uzumaki-san, are you all right?" one of the guards asked cautiously, peering at the stunned boy. Naruto's response was barely above a whisper. "Databeo." And then, in a swirl of leaves, he was gone. Meanwhile, back at Naruto's training ground, Haku was trying her best to focus on her duties. As Naruto's self-appointed assistant, she was committed to being as diligent and supportive as she had once been for Zabuza-sama, though in a much warmer, less brutal way. Dressed in a dark blue kimono with a mesh shirt underneath, and open-toed heels that echoed Tsunade's style, she moved with quiet grace as she organized Naruto's day. "You, personally, have a light day today, Naruto-kun," Haku announced, glancing over her notes. "After training with Sakura-san, you have a couple of hours free before your first meeting." "Ugh," came a grunt as one of Naruto's shadow clones kneed Sakura in the stomach during their sparring session nearby. "The construction crew?" Naruto asked calmly, unfazed by his teammates' sounds of distress. "Yes," Haku confirmed, her attention divided between her schedule and Sakura's training. "They'll be pitching you ideas for the remodel. I left a note card with questions you may want to ask on your desk. Also, have you considered renting office space? Working out of your apartment might become a bit untenable, given everything you're involved in." "I plan to include an office during the building remodel," Naruto responded, blocking Sakura's next attack. "Along with a ceiling chamber." Haku nodded approvingly. "Makes sense. The meeting should last no more than an hour. After that, Shizun-san has requested your presence at the hospital, though she did clarify that it's not to replace your usual clones but to supplement them." Naruto tilted his head, curious. "Did she give any specifics?" "No," Haku replied, shaking her head. "But she said it wouldn't interfere with your availability for anything else today." "Okay. What else?" "You have that meeting scheduled at 1, Haku began, her tone slightly hesitant, "but there's still time to cancel it," Naruto cut her off, his voice firmer than usual. "He's been given a chance to be straight with me, Haku." Haku frowned, her concern evident. "I understand, Naruto-kun, but I still think this might be going too far." "No one is getting hurt by what I'm doing," Naruto replied, his tone resolute. "He can't make the same claim." "To your knowledge, maybe," Haku countered softly, "but you don't know that, for either claim." Naruto sighed but remained firm. "True. But I will continue." Haku sighed as well but didn't press further. After that, the rest of your day is free for training. I'll start your Senbon training at 2, and Sai-san will be free by 4. Anything else? Your clones are scheduled to dispel at 3, 6, and 9. Got it, Naruto nodded, pleased with the efficiency of the day. Oh, and will you be free for dinner tonight? He asked, throwing a quick smile her way. Haku returned the smile. Chappie and I will arrive at 8. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud groan from Sakura, who had just been knocked flat on her back by Naruto's clone. The pink-haired kunoichi stood up, dusting herself off angrily, and marched toward Naruto, her temper flaring. Arg, damn it, Naruto. What's your problem today? She yelled, visibly frustrated. I'm here to train with you, not some clone. Why was that thing being so hard on me? Naruto blinked, genuinely confused. You kept leaving the same opening in your stance. I've pointed it out before, but you haven't corrected it yet, so I thought maybe a direct consequence could help. Better I do it than an enemy. Besides, since I won't be with you on your upcoming mission, this is the best way I can protect you. Sakura's irritation simmered down as Naruto's words sunk in. He wasn't being harsh just to be difficult, he was trying to help her improve. He was genuinely concerned for her safety. Fine, she muttered. But could you at least heal me? I'm sore all over. Naruto started to step forward, but Haku spoke up, her voice calm but firm. I believe that would be a mistake, Naruto-kun. Both Naruto and Sakura turned to her in surprise. If you heal her now, she won't feel the full consequence of her mistake, Haku continued, her tone patient. Pain is a powerful teacher. If you take it away too soon, the lesson won't stick. Naruto considered Haku's words for a moment before nodding. I agree with Haku, Sakura-san. The clone held back, so while it may hurt, you aren't seriously injured. Sakura, her patience wearing thin, shouted, What? Naruto, just heal me. Before Naruto could respond, Haku fixed her with a calm but deadly smile. I suggest you lower your voice, Sakura-san, and never raise it at Naruto-kun in my presence again. There was a subtle but unmistakable threat in Haku's words. Sakura, though furious, felt a flicker of doubt as she met Haku's intense gaze. A part of her wanted to push back, to challenge the older girl. But before the tension could escalate, the trio's attention was diverted by the sound of approaching shouts and the telltale dust cloud that could only mean one thing. Yo echoed through the training ground as 2 green blurs appeared, coming to a dramatic stop in front of Naruto and Haku. Yash! Good morning, youthful Naruto-kun. And to you as well. Guy boomed, grinning brightly. Good morning, Guy-sensei, Naruto replied, his tone as neutral as ever. Morning, Mato-san, Haku added politely. Sakura, still flustered from her encounter with Haku, stood silently, blinking in disbelief at the odd scene. Rock Lee, noticing her quiet demeanor, immediately perked up. Hello. You must be the lovely Sakura-chan. Lee said enthusiastically, giving her a formal bow. I am Rock Lee, Konoha's beautiful green wild beast. Would you like to go out with me? I'll protect you with my life. Sakura's eye twitched in irritation. This is way too much, way too early, she replied, shaking her head. Sorry, Lee-san, I'm interested in someone else. Lee's shoulders slumped for a brief moment before his eyes lit up again with fiery determination. Ah, I see. Naruto-kun has clearly captured your heart. But I will not be discouraged. I will prove my worth to you. Sakura blushed furiously. And no. It's not Naruto. Guy, sensing the tension, clapped his hands to change the subject. Naruto-kun, I understand you're not training with my eternal rival this week, as Tenten-chan is standing in for you. How would you like to join us for some youthful training today? Naruto thought for a moment, then nodded. I have some time now. Did you hear that, Lee-kun? We shall ignite the flames of youth in both Naruto-kun and you. Guy announced, striking a dramatic pose. Let's start with a spirited run. I can barely contain my excitement, Guy-sensei. I am exploding with youthful power. Lee declared, mimicking Guy's pose. He turned to Naruto. What about you, Naruto-kun? Naruto blinked. I don't feel combustion is imminent, no. Lee bowed his head briefly before raising it again with a blinding smile. That must be your hip attitude, Naruto-kun. Truly, you are a worthy rival. Guy and Lee took off, running toward their training grounds. Naruto swiftly followed, catching up to the two taijutsu specialists with ease. Sakura and Haku watched them go, the odd trio quickly disappearing into the distance. Haku smiled to herself at the bizarre but amusing exchange. Sakura, still baffled by the whole scene, remembered Haku's last words and turned to the older girl, her frustration bubbling back to the surface. Haku-san, do you have a problem with me? Sakura asked, crossing her arms. Yes, Haku replied without hesitation, her tone calm but firm. You take out your frustrations on Naruto-kun. He tries to help you, and instead of showing appreciation, you berate him. He may not take personal offense, but I do on his behalf. You need to find a healthier outlet for your frustrations. Sakura's temper flared again. I don't do that. Yes, you do, Haku said simply. You even did it in Nami. But that stops now. How is any of this your business? Sakura demanded, her voice rising. He's my teammate. If he has a problem, he can say so. Haku's expression didn't change. I'm his assistant and, more importantly, his friend. So, I will repeat, find a better outlet for your frustrations. Sakura clenched her fists, her anger boiling over. What if I take them out on you, she challenged, her voice low and dangerous. Haku didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled delicately, her voice sweet but her words sharp. You fight like a pillow-fisted gorilla, Sakura-san. You're years away from being a threat to me. With that, Haku disappeared in a swirl of wind, leaving Sakura gaping in shock. A burning anger rose in Sakura's chest, and she turned her rage toward the nearest training post, pummeling it with everything she had. She didn't stop until her hands were raw and her frustrations temporarily vented, her mind already racing with thoughts of what Haku had said, and how much it stung to realize there was truth in her words. Yoshino Nara stared at Ino, her sharp eyes narrowing in disbelief. She was certain she must have misheard the young Yamanaka heiress. It was still early, far too early for what she thought Ino had just asked her. Surely, Imiko's little girl hadn't come to her house at this hour to request this. She could barely fathom it. Ino-chan, Yoshino began, trying to give the girl the benefit of the doubt, I'm not sure I'm understanding you. Ino, clearly frustrated, huffed in response, holding up a small vial of clear liquid for Yoshino to see. I want you to put this in Shikamaru's drink tomorrow night. Yoshino blinked. You want me to drug my own son? It's not a drug, Yoshino-abakan, Ino clarified, shaking the vial slightly. It's just a stimulant. Like, really potent caffeine. That's it. Yoshino blinked again, still processing the audacity of the request. And this is for a training assignment? Ino nodded, her face serious. Yes. Asuma-sensei agreed to train us more rigorously, but only if I can beat Shikamaru and Choji in a spar at the same time. This, she gestured to the vial, is part of my plan to level the playing field. Yoshino leaned back, considering Ino's explanation. She'd known the Yamanaka girl for years, watching her grow up alongside her lazy son and the Akimichi boy. But this was bold, even for Ino. You want to cheat, Yoshino stated plainly. No, not cheat, Ino said quickly, shaking her head. It's not against the rules we set. I'm just taking advantage of the resources available to me to ensure success. Yoshino pursed her lips, eyeing the vial suspiciously. Ino's logic wasn't entirely out of line. Shikamaru did need a good push sometimes, especially when it came to his training. Asuma-sensei was more than capable of pushing his team, but they were a far cry from the intense level of effort Yoshino wanted to see from her son. And honestly, it wouldn't hurt Shikamaru to deal with a bit of unexpected energy during a spar. Perhaps it was time for her lazy son to learn that outwitting his teammates wouldn't always be enough. Still, the idea of drugging him, even with something as harmless as a stimulant, rubbed her the wrong way. Then again, Shikamaru was hardly a child anymore. He could handle a little extra energy. I'll do it, Yoshino said after a long pause, but only if you give me a full description of what this is and how you got it. Ino's eyes lit up with excitement. She had anticipated Yoshino's hesitation and had spent much of the previous night documenting the exact process of distilling the stimulant, an idea she had come up with after brainstorming with Hinata and Naruto. She pulled out a neatly prepared set of notes and handed them to Yoshino, who took them with a raised eyebrow. The Nara matriarch scanned the notes briefly, impressed with the level of detail. It wasn't often that she saw someone outside her own family being this methodical. Maybe Asuma's team had more potential than she'd thought. Satisfied, Yoshino nodded. I'll handle it. Ino beamed, relieved that she had managed to get Yoshino on board. With one mother down, she felt more confident that her plan might just work after all. Meanwhile, Guy stood at the edge of the training ground, watching Naruto disappear into the distance after their morning session. Lee was still shouting enthusiastic goodbyes, his voice echoing through the trees as he waved at his departing friend. It had been a productive session. Guy had instructed both Lee and Naruto to remove their weights and resistance seals, forcing them to fight at full capacity. Naruto had made remarkable strides in his taijutsu, and Guy was particularly pleased with how well he had adapted to the base Gukken style that Guy had shown him. But despite the positive results, Guy couldn't shake a lingering feeling of guilt. Using Naruto in this way, pitting him against Lee to drive the boy's growth, felt like a manipulation, even though the intentions were good. Lee had become so fixated on Neji, his chosen rival, that he was blind to the potential threats from others. He had to realize there were other prodigies in Konoha, like Naruto, who could match his speed and strength. The fight had worked, Lee had learned that Naruto was a worthy challenge. But the experience left Guy feeling unsettled. Still, he hoped the battle with an elite jounin would be a fair trade for Naruto's time. As Guy pondered the ethics of his actions, Naruto, on the other hand, was already back on his own path, headed toward his apartment. He still had a full day ahead of him, with meetings and more training, but for now, all he wanted was a quick shower before he tackled the next tasks. The fight with Lee had been invigorating, but it had also given Naruto some new ideas about how to improve his own training routine. Lee's speed and strength were impressive, but Naruto realized that their combat styles were vastly different. The rigid stances of the Gukken style were powerful, but Naruto's own fluid, adaptable style gave him an advantage in unpredictable situations. He could see the potential for integrating some of the basic strikes and stances Guy had shown him, but in a way that suited his own fighting methods. His improved memory recall seal would help him project the fight and incorporate those techniques over time. As he left Team 9's training ground, Naruto crossed paths with Neji, who looked particularly irritable this morning. "What are you doing here, Uzumaki?" Neji demanded, his tone cold. Naruto paused and looked Neji in the eyes for a moment before replying, "Leaving." He continued walking, not paying much attention to the Hyuga's scowl. Neji's condescending attitude had long since stopped bothering Naruto. Neji, however, was far from satisfied with the response. You would do well to speak properly to your betters, Neji spat, clearly offended. Naruto stopped, turning back slightly to regard Neji with a perplexed expression. Betters? Naruto repeated, genuinely puzzled. The concept of betters didn't make much sense to him. There was no formal ranking system of superiority between shinobi as far as he was concerned. He briefly considered what Neji might mean by the term before replying with a shrug, if I find some, I will. Neji's scowl deepened, but Naruto turned and continued on his way, not caring for the conflict. He had no time for petty arguments, especially not with someone like Neji, whose bitterness seemed to cloud everything he said. I'll teach him a lesson one day, Neji muttered under his breath, fuming. Him and the others who think they can defy fate. Naruto, now paying Neji no further attention, focused his mind on his upcoming schedule. He still had about an hour and a half before the first meeting for his redevelopment project, which gave him just enough time to shower, eat, and send a few clones to the archives to continue some research. The redevelopment of his apartment complex was something Naruto was genuinely excited about. While most of the structural changes would be minor, he had a few innovative ideas to make the building more appealing to future tenants. He wanted to add a small grocery store and a laundry service on the ground floor, as well as a private training area behind the building. He'd also planned to create a secure hot spring for the tenants, something he thought would be both functional and enjoyable. But there was more to it than just the visible additions. Naruto had plans for several sub-basements, which would be created using Doton Jutsu and enhanced with advanced Fuinjutsu. These would serve as his own private training facilities, something he wanted to keep secret from the rest of the village for now. Not every development, as his Aji-san had taught him, needed to be shared with the village. Naruto's thoughts drifted briefly to his other ongoing projects, Anko's cursed seal, his medical training, and, of course, the battle Fuinjutsu he had been working on. But there was one project that had stalled, and it was starting to frustrate him. His short-range communication seal was functional, but Naruto wanted something better, something capable of handling audio, video, and text transmissions simultaneously. The issue wasn't the coding. He had already created a theoretical framework based on the barrier information from his mother. The problem was the method of transmission. The images were blurry and unreliable, and Naruto realized he would need to develop a space-time technique similar to the Hiraishin to make it work. To achieve this, Naruto knew he had to finally start learning his father's signature jutsu, the Flying Thunder God technique. But not just learning it, he needed to surpass it. The Hiraishin was a combination of ninjutsu and Fuinjutsu, and Naruto wanted to make his communication system entirely Fuinjutsu-based. Humming to himself, Naruto exited the shower, feeling refreshed and ready to tackle the day ahead. Even with his clones helping him, he often felt like he was nearing his limit with how much he had to juggle. But there was still something thrilling about it, about pushing his limits, discovering new ways to improve, and contributing to the village in ways no one expected from a 12-year-old orphan. After dressing in a black V-neck long-sleeve shirt over his usual mesh armor, paired with black pants and sandals, Naruto made his way to the kitchen. A clone had prepared a simple breakfast, omuris with miso soup, and Naruto sat down at the table, enjoying the brief moment of peace. For now, he allowed himself to savor the meal, knowing that soon enough, he'd be diving back into the whirlwind of meetings, training, and research. There was much to do, and not enough hours in the day. But Naruto, as always, was ready for the challenge. Kurenai smiled as she observed her team at the training grounds. Team 8 had just completed one of their regular exercises, a game of hide and seek. The twist was that none of the genin were allowed to use their clan's signature abilities. This limitation forced them to develop other skills and think more strategically. Kurenai had even applied a special salve under Kiba's nose to suppress his heightened sense of smell, which was impossible for him to turn off on his own. Initially, they'd struggled, but over the months, each member had grown considerably, both individually and as a team. Kiba had started to become more observant, learning to rely less on brute force and more on analyzing his surroundings. His rash nature still dominated his fighting style, but now, there was a layer of thoughtfulness that hadn't been there before. Shino was slowly learning to interact more with his teammates and the world around him instead of observing everything from a detached distance. His tactical mind was sharp, but now he was more engaged with Kiba and Hinata, even joining in on conversations about non-shinobi matters. Kurenai had noticed the slight uptick in the amount of talking Shino did and was quietly pleased by it. Hinata had arguably come the farthest. Without her Byakugan to rely on, she had been forced to hone her instincts, relying on subtle movements, sounds, and emotions around her. Kurenai had watched her confidence grow steadily over time, and while the young Hyuga heiress still had a long way to go, her newfound determination was visible in the way she moved and spoke with more conviction. Kurenai couldn't have been more proud. Team 8 might not have been as combat-focused as Team 7 or Team 10, but they had their own strengths. They were trackers, scouts, and now, a multidimensional team that could handle a wide variety of missions. Kurenai had even begun thinking about introducing them to more genjutsu training, beyond just detecting and breaking illusions, an area in which Hinata, Kiba, and even Shino showed some potential. She wanted them to be well-rounded ninja, and they were making steady progress in that direction. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sudden sight of a hawk circling above them, a summons from the Hokage. That usually meant a mission, and likely one with time-sensitive information. "Team, gather up." Kurenai called out, her tone serious yet calm. The genin immediately stopped what they were doing and hurried over to their sensei. "We're being summoned to the Hokage's office. Pack up your things, and let's move." The team made their way swiftly to the Hokage tower, arriving with the quiet precision expected of them. Inside, they learned that their mission was a search and rescue in the mountainous regions northeast of Konoha. The client's party had gone missing during an expedition, and it was up to Team 8 to find them, whether alive or to confirm their deaths. It was classified as a C-rank mission, but Kurenai knew that search and rescue missions in rugged terrain could become dangerous quickly. After receiving their orders, Kurenai gave her team an hour to pack and prepare. As they dispersed to gather their equipment, Kurenai contemplated her own preparations. The mountainous region meant cold weather, so she opted for the standard jounin uniform, layered with additional protection against the chill. She packed extra supplies, making sure to account for the unpredictable conditions they were likely to face. As she packed, her mind wandered to the Uzumaki boy. Hinata had been using temperature control seals he'd created, and Kurenai realized she should probably request some for herself and the team. The seals had proven effective, and if anyone could barter with Naruto for more, it was her. She'd have to think of a fair trade, perhaps some advanced genjutsu lessons or even a jutsu. She made a mental note to approach him once they returned from this mission. After packing and grabbing a quick lunch, Kurenai met her team at the main gate. She smiled to herself as she saw them all arrive on time, not too early but definitely not late. A good sign. She gave them a brief rundown of the travel plan and expectations, and once they checked out officially, Team 8 set off on their mission, each of them fully prepared for the days ahead. Ino stood in the middle of her team's training ground, eyes focused and mind racing. She was planning for her upcoming spar with Shikamaru and Choji, her chance to prove herself to Asuma-sensei and earn more rigorous training for her team. Her earlier meetings with Yoshino and Choji's mother had gone well, but now that the reality of the situation was sinking in, she couldn't shake a sudden wave of self-doubt. She pushed the dark thoughts aside. She'd spent too long being seen as nothing more than the Sasuke-obsessed fangirl. That wasn't her anymore. Sure, she still admired Sasuke, but she was also training hard, harder than she ever had before. Ino had been the one pushing for more challenging missions, asking for more training, and even trying to expand her skill set beyond the Yamanaka clan's signature jutsu. She had to win this challenge. Not because it would suddenly change everyone's perception of her, but because it was the first step toward proving she was serious about being a kunoichi. As she examined the terrain, she started mapping out her strategy. She would need to use movement to her advantage. Shikamaru's shadow possession required stability and time to extend, and his stamina was limited. If she could keep him moving, off balance, and on the defensive, he wouldn't have time to properly strategize. Choji, on the other hand, was the opposite. He was all movement, all strength. But she could use his momentum against him. Without Shikamaru guiding him, Choji's confidence wavered. It was a weak point Ino could exploit, though she made a note to work with him on that later. She didn't want her teammate to rely on Shikamaru forever. Her mind whirled with possibilities. Ino's determination was palpable as she ran through her plans, preparing the battlefield in her head. This was her chance to show Asuma-sensei, and herself, that she was capable of more than everyone thought. That she could stand on her own. In the observation deck of Konoha Hospital, two blondes sat quietly, watching a surgery unfold in the operating room below. The sight of the medical team performing the delicate procedure was like watching a well-rehearsed dance, calm, coordinated, and precise. From the outside, it looked effortless, but Tsunade knew better than anyone the split-second decision-making and stress involved. Tsunade's gaze was focused, but her hands betrayed the last remnants of her long-standing hemophobia. They were steady, but her fingers twitched every so often, as if remembering a time when blood triggered intense feelings of fear and helplessness. She had gotten better, thanks to therapy, and watching surgeries was part of her immersion therapy. It was a way to face her phobia head-on in a controlled environment, and Tsunade had made remarkable progress. Still, the discomfort lingered. Beside her, Naruto sat quietly, observing the surgery with his usual intensity. He was a quick learner, absorbing everything like a sponge. But he also wasn't blind to Tsunade's discomfort. After a few minutes, he reached over and gently took her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Tsunade glanced at him, a small smile forming on her lips at the simple gesture. She didn't pull her hand away. Being a combat medic is like fighting a war on all fronts, Tsunade began, her voice steady but thoughtful. Time is always against you. You're not in a sterile environment, and sometimes you've got enemies breathing down your neck. You never have enough supplies. You're tired. You're overworked. And there's never enough light. She paused, watching as Shizune led the team through the next phase of the surgery. The development of medical ninjutsu has helped a lot. Fewer surgeries mean fewer chances for things to go wrong. But even with that, medical ninjutsu has stagnated. Why? Naruto asked, his attention still on the operation. Tsunade sighed. Honestly? It's because I stopped creating new techniques. I was the one pushing the field forward, and when I left, well, no one stepped up to fill the gap. It's part of why Sensei was right to call me back. With us working together, Naruto, I think we can push things forward again. Maybe even inspire some others to stop hiding in my shadow. Naruto nodded, understanding. Tsunade turned her attention back to the surgery, her thoughts turning to Naruto's progress. Your security measures will go into full effect soon. I've been impressed with your pharmacology studies. Next, I want you to start working on actual treatment seals. And when you get back from your next mission, we'll begin your surgical rotations in earnest. You'll need to be here in person for that. Your clones can still do rounds with the diagnosticians, but no more hengenji into other people. Naruto nodded again. He didn't mind dropping the henge. It had been used to keep things under wraps, but he understood Tsunade's reasoning. If he was going to start seeing more patients, he needed to build trust, not hide behind deception. Tsunade's eyes flicked back to him, a wry smile forming. One more thing, did you treat Imiko Yamanaka? Jiraiya stared at the scroll in disbelief, his mind reeling from what he had just read. The room, dimly lit and quiet except for the crackle of a nearby fire, suddenly felt stifling as the weight of Naruto's words sank in. What the hell is this, Gaki? Jiraiya muttered to himself, his eyes scanning the contents of the letter again, searching for some sign that it was a joke. But there was none. It was all painfully real. He looked up at the messenger toad who had brought the letter, still sitting on the bed and looking up at him expectantly. This can't be right. He bought my publishing house? The toad blinked, unconcerned. That's what the paperwork says, Jiraiya-sama. Jiraiya rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. He bought the publishing house, he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. That brat. He bought my publishing house just to blackmail me into helping him with Anko's cursed seal? He dropped the scroll onto the bed and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. This was something he hadn't seen coming, and it was giving him an overwhelming sense of déjà vu. So much like Minato, but with Kushina's fiery determination. The kid had inherited both of his parents' most infuriating traits, and Jiraiya knew that wasn't going to change anytime soon. As he lay there, trying to figure out what his next move should be, he realized something. He'd underestimated Naruto. He'd thought of him as just a boy, albeit a gifted and determined one, but still a boy. Now, though, Naruto was proving himself to be far more cunning than Jiraiya had given him credit for. He had taken an indirect path to achieve his goal, one that was equal parts brilliant and ruthless. Naruto had backed him into a corner, and there was no way out unless he complied. Damn it, kid, Jiraiya groaned, throwing an arm over his eyes. You really are your father's son. He'd have to explain everything to Naruto now, whether he liked it or not. His reasons for delaying the cursed seal research couldn't be kept in the dark anymore. And he couldn't risk the boy actually halting the production of Ika. The world didn't deserve such cruelty. He sighed again, finally accepting his fate. Alright, Gaki. You win. Meanwhile, four jounin sat in a dimly lit bar in Konoha, nursing their drinks and waiting for the night's guest of honor, though he was running late. Kakashi, his eye lazily scanning the room, noticed how utterly frazzled Asuma looked. The Sarutobi's normally laid-back demeanor was strained, and there were faint lines of stress on his face that weren't usually there. Even Guy, always loud and exuberant, had picked up on it. Your flames of youth are flickering, Asuma. Guy declared in his usual boisterous manner. What has dampened your spirit, my friend? Asuma gave Guy a withering look, the unlit cigarette in his mouth twitching slightly. I'm fine. Just, had a rough few days. If any of you want to trade kunoichi, though, I'm open to negotiation. Kurenai raised an eyebrow at the statement, instantly intrigued. What's going on with Ino? I've heard from Hinata that she's been taking her training more seriously lately. That doesn't sound like something to complain about. Asuma sighed, leaning back in his chair. 5 days ago, I would have agreed with you. She was just an eager genin, trying to learn new things and keep up with the others. Then, something changed. Kakashi glanced over the top of his book, genuinely curious now. What happened? Asuma ran a hand through his hair, clearly still processing the events of the last few days. Well. Asuma had arrived at the training ground early that morning, surprised to see Ino already there. She stood calmly, her face serene, as if she had everything under control. There was a quiet confidence about her that was new, and while Asuma wasn't sure what to make of it yet, he chalked it up to youthful overconfidence. Still, something about her calmness felt off. The boys arrived a few minutes later, and Asuma could immediately tell that something wasn't right with them. Shikamaru looked even more exhausted than usual, far beyond his typical laziness, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Choji was sweating profusely, his normally carefree demeanor replaced with visible discomfort. Asuma frowned. They hadn't even started sparring yet, and the two were already worn out. Ino, on the other hand, stood tall and composed, the picture of readiness. Alright, Asuma called out, hoping to kickstart things. This is a friendly spar. No death blows, no maiming. Everything else is fair game. Any questions? All three genin shook their heads, but Shikamaru's movements were sluggish, and Choji's breathing was already heavy. Then, begin. Before anyone could move, Shikamaru raised a hand, his voice sounding strained. We quit. Asuma blinked, taken aback. What do you mean, you quit? You haven't even started. Shikamaru let out a long yawn, his eyes drooping as he explained, I don't know how, but Ino poisoned us. I can barely think, and Choji is. He yawned again, stretching out on the ground as if he didn't have the energy to stand. Already exhausted. Too troublesome. And with that, Shikamaru flopped onto the ground, followed by Choji, who collapsed with an exasperated sigh. Both boys were completely out of commission before the spar even began. Asuma stared at them in shock. Poisoned? He turned slowly to Ino, who was wearing a wide, proud smile on her face. I did it, Asuma-sensei. Ino exclaimed, clearly thrilled with herself. I even understood the secret lesson. Secret lesson? Asuma echoed, raising an eyebrow in confusion. Ino nodded enthusiastically. Yeah. You wanted me to treat this like an assassination mission, right? That's why I had Shikamaru and Choji's moms poison them. I also got some blackmail material on Choji. She beamed, looking for all the world like she had just passed the test of her life. Asuma, however, was internally screaming. What? He thought, trying to keep his composure. Outwardly, he just nodded. Good job, Ino, he said, forcing the words out with a strained smile. Ino nodded, her confidence bolstered by his approval. Meanwhile, Shikamaru and Choji remained on the ground, Shikamaru muttering something about how he would have quit anyway because it was too troublesome. For the next hour, Asuma helped Ino take down the traps she had set up, traps he hadn't even known were there. Pitfalls designed to sprain ankles, tripwires that triggered kunai and shuriken to fly out from hidden places, and even flashbangs and explosive tags carefully hidden in the trees. Asuma was dumbfounded by the level of preparation Ino had put into this. He hadn't expected her to take things this far. And while he was impressed with her ingenuity and effort, he was also more than a little concerned. When had this shift happened? Just days ago, she had been like any other eager genin, determined to prove herself but still lacking the depth of a true ninja mindset. Now, though, she had not only shown the ability to outthink her teammates but also the ruthlessness to poison them without hesitation. After they finished clearing the traps, Asuma kept his word and walked her through some beginner moves with his knuckle knives. They were too large for her smaller hands, but she showed a surprising aptitude for wielding them. By the end of the lesson, he had already made a mental note to get her fitted for her own pair. Back at the bar, Asuma finished recounting the story, his tired eyes meeting those of his fellow jounin. Kurenai, Kakashi, and Guy were all listening intently, their drinks momentarily forgotten. Kakashi closed his book, clearly impressed. So she poisoned them and set up an entire field of traps? That's actually kind of brilliant. It is, Kurenai agreed, though there was a note of concern in her voice. But that level of ruthlessness in a genin, it's a bit concerning, isn't it? Asuma nodded. Yeah. I'm proud of her, don't get me wrong. But it's like she's shifted overnight. She's so determined to prove herself that she's willing to do whatever it takes, even if it means poisoning her own teammates. I'm not sure if I should be impressed or worried. Guy, ever the optimist, smiled brightly. That's the spirit of youth, Asuma. She's simply pushing her limits, and with proper guidance, she'll channel that determination in a more positive direction. Kakashi gave Guy a side eye, then looked back at Asuma. Have you talked to her about it? About why she feels the need to go this far? Asuma sighed, taking a long sip from his drink. Not yet. I'm planning on having a talk with her after this mission. I need to get a better understanding of where her head's at. Kurenai nodded. It's good that she's taking things seriously, but you'll want to make sure she's not losing sight of what it means to be part of a team. Yeah, Asuma said, the exhaustion creeping back into his voice. That's the plan. As they sat in silence, sipping their drinks, the door to the bar swung open, and the guest of honor finally arrived. Jiraiya, looking more frazzled than usual, stomped into the room. He spotted the group and made a beeline for them, his usual swagger absent. Kakashi raised an eyebrow, closing his book again. You look like you've seen a ghost. Jiraiya grumbled, dropping into a chair. Worse. I've seen Naruto. As Anko finished recounting the story, her audience sat in a mixture of awe, confusion, and amusement. The bar had quieted, with each jounin processing the gravity of what had happened. Anko, free of the cursed seal that had defined her life for so long, was smiling, genuinely smiling, as she sipped her drink. The weight of Orochimaru's legacy no longer burdened her, and she exuded a sense of lightness that was rare to see. Kurenai was the first to speak, her voice soft but full of admiration. Anko, that's incredible. I had no idea Naruto was capable of something like this, let alone on his own. Guy, eyes still wide with excitement, practically vibrated in his seat. Youthful. What a magnificent story. Naruto-kun's youthful flames burned brightly to free you from the shackles of that vile snake. He raised his drink again, voice booming. To Naruto-kun, the hero of the hour. Take it down, Guy, Kakashi muttered, though his tone was as calm as ever. You're going to get us kicked out before we've even finished the first round. Asuma chuckled, but his eyes were serious as he regarded Anko. The kid really did all that? He's only a genin. I mean, he's not your average genin, but still, removing Orochimaru's cursed seal is no small feat. Kakashi leaned back, eyes smiling as he turned to face the others. I've been saying it for a while now. Naruto is special. I don't mean that in the he's a promising shinobi way. I mean, he's going to change things. He already is. Kurenai raised an eyebrow. The chosen one, huh? You mentioned that earlier, but what exactly do you mean, Kakashi? Kakashi's expression turned just a shade more serious. Naruto's not like anyone else. It's not just his strength or his intelligence, though both are impressive. It's his drive. He doesn't stop once he sets his mind on something. He's determined to make a mark on this village, and he's doing it in ways we didn't expect. Asuma crossed his arms, frowning thoughtfully. But buying Jiraiya's publishing house to blackmail him into helping with Anko's seal? I mean, sure, it worked, but, wait, what? Anko interrupted, her grin faltering as she looked between the group. Naruto did what? Kakashi chuckled lightly. He bought Jiraiya's publishing company. Well, blackmailed might be a bit strong, let's say he strongly persuaded Jiraiya by threatening to halt the production of Ika until he helped Anko. Anko blinked, then threw her head back and laughed. That little brat. I knew there had to be something going on with Jiraiya, he kept stalling every time I asked about removing the seal. Serves him right. Kurenai, trying to hide her amusement, shook her head. Naruto's methods might be a bit unconventional, but they get results. I can't argue with that. Asuma sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, well, now I've got to be on alert with Ino, thanks to him. She's taking everything I say and running with it, interpreting hidden meanings that don't exist. And the fact she actually poisoned Shikamaru and Choji just to win a spar, Naruto's definitely rubbing off on her. Kakashi raised a hand in mock defense. I didn't tell her to poison them. That was all her. Yeah, but I'm sure she got the idea from that blonde of yours, Asuma grumbled, though there was a hint of a smile on his lips. She's more determined than ever to prove herself, and now I have to keep up with her pace. It's exhausting. Anko snickered. Sounds like she's learning the ropes. You should be proud of her, Asuma. At least she's putting in the effort. That's not the problem, Asuma muttered. It's the fact that she's taken to interpreting my words like she's a mind reader that's got me worried. She's looking for hidden lessons in everything. Kurenai smirked. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. She's thinking strategically. Just make sure she doesn't get too carried away. Guy clapped his hands together, nearly causing Kakashi to spill his drink. Wosh. That's the spirit. She is growing. Her youthful fire is blazing brightly, much like Naruto-kun's. He flashed his signature thumbs-up and sparkling smile. Asuma, you should encourage her youthful energy. Asuma groaned. Easy for you to say, Guy. Not all of us are morning people. Kakashi, sipping his drink, glanced at Anko. So, what now? You're free of the seal. That must be a strange feeling after all these years. Anko's grin softened, and she leaned back in her chair, staring at her drink for a moment before answering. It's weird. I don't really know how to describe it. The thing has been a part of me for so long, and now it's gone. She paused, her voice dropping slightly. It's like a part of me is missing, but not in a bad way. It's like this, wait, this thing that was always there, even when I didn't want it to be, is just gone. I feel lighter. Freer. Kurenai nodded, her eyes filled with empathy. That makes sense. You've been carrying that burden for so long, it's going to take time to adjust. Yeah, Anko agreed, swirling her drink. But I'll tell you this, it's the best damn feeling I've had in years. And I owe it all to that brat. Kakashi smiled again. You'll have to thank him properly when you see him. He's not one for big emotional gestures, but he appreciates it when people acknowledge what he's done. Anko snorted. Yeah. I'll thank him when I see him, maybe even buy him some dango as a reward. Though knowing him, he'll probably just ask to see my tits again. That sounds about right, Kakashi muttered, though his eye crinkled in amusement. But seriously, Anko, I'm glad you're free of that thing. You deserve it. The group shared a moment of quiet camaraderie, the weight of Anko's story settling over them. It was a reminder of how deeply intertwined their lives were, how the village, and its people, were constantly evolving. Naruto's impact was already rippling through their ranks, and each of them knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. Jiraiya, still sitting silently at the table, finally spoke up. You know, I'm still pissed about the whole publishing house thing, but, damn, the kid's got guts. He's smarter than I gave him credit for. I've been dragging my feet on this, and he forced my hand. I respect that. Kakashi leaned back, raising his glass. Here's to Naruto, then. Whether we're ready for it or not, he's going to change everything. The others raised their glasses, and Anko smirked. Here's to the brat. To Naruto, they all echoed. And as they clinked their glasses together, each of them, whether they realized it or not, knew that the village would never be the same. Naruto was changing Konoha, one step at a time, and he was just getting started. Anko leaned back, taking in everything that had just happened. The cursed seal was finally gone, the bond with Orochimaru severed for good. She could hardly believe it. A part of her had come to terms with the fact that she might live with the mark forever, a constant reminder of her past mistakes. But now, she felt lighter, not just physically from the seal being gone, but emotionally too. There was a sense of peace she hadn't expected. Tsunade, sensing Anko's contemplation, offered a small smile. You did well, Anko. It takes courage to face something like that. Anko nodded, running a hand over the spot where the seal once was. I didn't think it would ever happen, honestly, she admitted. I owe the Gaki a lot. Tsunade chuckled softly. He doesn't do it for the thanks. But I think it wouldn't hurt to show some appreciation once he's back on his feet. He poured a lot of himself into this. Anko raised an eyebrow, her usual grin starting to return. Don't worry, I've got my ways of showing thanks. Besides, he seems like the kind of kid who could use some fun, huh? Tsunade gave her a wary look. Just don't corrupt him too much. He's still my student, and I need him in one piece. Anko smirked, a playful glint in her eyes. No promises, Tsunade-sama. She felt the warmth of the blanket wrapping around her and smiled softly, still surprised by how comfortable she was. The idea of the Gaki going out of his way to make her feel this way, to give her something as thoughtful as this blanket, left her with a strange, lingering gratitude. Maybe Tsunade was right. Naruto had a way of showing he cared through actions, not words. It made Anko respect him even more. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she could move forward, free from her past, with a future that was her own to shape. Alright, enough of the sentimental crap, Anko said, swinging her legs off the side of the bed. I'm starving. Dango. Time. Tsunade laughed. Go easy on the sweets. Your system still needs time to recover. Anko waved her off as she started to head out. I'll keep that in mind, sensei. As she stepped out of the room, she paused for a moment, looking back at Tsunade. When the Gaki wakes up, let him know I'll see him soon. He still owes me a proper explanation. Tsunade nodded, her expression softening as she watched Anko leave. The snake kunoichi might have seemed flippant, but Tsunade could see how much this moment meant to her. It was a new beginning. And she had a feeling that Naruto had just gained another unexpected ally, whether he realized it or not. Kakashi stood there in stunned silence, trying to process everything that had just transpired. Naruto's actions were calculated, deliberate, and full of a sense of justice that Kakashi hadn't fully expected from him. The boy was quickly becoming a force to be reckoned with, not just in terms of raw power but in his sheer determination and moral convictions. The conversation with Jiraiya had left Kakashi conflicted. On the one hand, he understood Jiraiya's desire to preserve Minato's legacy, to keep the seal intact as a way to honor his fallen student. On the other hand, Naruto was right, this was his body, his burden to bear, and he had the right to make decisions about it. The fact that Naruto had already made a new ki without Jiraiya's consent spoke volumes about how serious he was. Kakashi could see both sides, but it was clear that Naruto wasn't a child that could be dismissed anymore. He had grown, not just in skill but in his sense of self. The fact that he had gone so far as to blackmail Jiraiya to help Anko was telling. He was willing to do whatever it took to protect the people he cared about. Guy, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, wiped away his manly tears of youth and clapped a hand on Kakashi's shoulder. Kakashi, my eternal rival, your student is a shining example of youthful determination. He is blossoming into a formidable shinobi. Kakashi sighed, his usual lazy demeanor faltering. Yeah, he's something, all right. Anko, who had been recounting the events to Guy and Kakashi earlier, glanced over. She hadn't known the full extent of what Naruto had done to help her, and as she processed the story, a mixture of emotions crossed her face, gratitude, surprise, and perhaps a bit of admiration. That kid, he really did that for me, she asked, more to herself than anyone else. Kakashi gave her a sidelong glance, deciding whether or not to reveal the full extent of what Naruto had done. Yeah. He did. Though I don't think he did it for the thanks. Anko smirked. Typical. Guess I'll have to thank him in my own way. Kakashi wasn't sure he liked the sound of that, knowing Anko's penchant for being unpredictable, but he didn't say anything. It was clear that Naruto had earned her respect in a way few others had. As for Jiraiya, the Toad Sage's departure had left an uneasy air. Kakashi knew that this wasn't over between them. Jiraiya wasn't the type to let something like this go easily, but perhaps it was time he started seeing Naruto not as Kushina's brat or Minato's legacy, but as his own person. "I'll have to check on him later," Kakashi muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Guy nodded vigorously. "Indeed. But for now, Kakashi, let us engage in youthful sparring to clear our minds of these heavy thoughts." Kakashi sighed again. He could feel the onset of another ridiculous challenge from Guy, but maybe that was what he needed right now, a distraction from the complex situation unfolding between Naruto, Jiraiya, and the dangerous path they were all walking. Anko, meanwhile, was already plotting her next move. She didn't know what exactly she'd do to thank Naruto, but one thing was clear: the boy was far more than just the loudmouth troublemaker he appeared to be. He was someone she could trust, someone who had shown that he would go to great lengths for those he cared about. And Anko never forgot a favor. Hinata, Ino, Tenten, and Haku all shared a somber silence after Naruto's admission. The atmosphere shifted as his words sunk in. Despite Naruto's usual energy and optimism, it was clear that the situation with his team had affected him more than he let on. He tried to remain positive, but his sense of isolation from his teammates was evident. Hinata, who knew Naruto better than most, felt a familiar pang of sympathy. She had always admired his resilience, but hearing how lonely he felt despite being surrounded by people struck her deeply. She glanced at him and made a silent vow to be there for him in whatever way she could. Naruto deserved more than just teammates, he deserved true companionship. Ino, ever perceptive, noticed the way Hinata's eyes lingered on Naruto and smirked internally. She'd let that play out naturally, but she was also struck by how out of place Naruto sounded in his own team. "That sounds rough, Naruto," she finally said. "You shouldn't feel like you're the problem, especially when no one is willing to talk about whatever issues they have. They're supposed to be your team." Tenten crossed her arms, her mind racing as well. "Honestly, from what you've said, it sounds like the problem isn't you. You're trying, but if the others aren't putting in the effort to work together, it's not on you to fix that alone." She hesitated, then added, "A team that can't communicate isn't a team at all." Haku nodded softly, ever calm and observant. "You're not the issue, Naruto-kun. People can be difficult, especially if they aren't willing to open up or share their thoughts. You shouldn't carry that weight by yourself." Naruto smiled weakly, appreciating their support. He hadn't expected to open up like this, but he felt comfortable around them. "Thanks, everyone. I guess I'm still figuring it out." Hinata spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. "You'll find your way, Naruto-kun. You always do." She smiled warmly at him, her eyes full of quiet determination. "And if they can't see how amazing you are, then it's their loss. We're here for you, no matter what." Ino nudged Hinata teasingly. "Spoken like a true best friend, right, Hinata-chan?" The blush that dusted Hinata's cheeks didn't go unnoticed by anyone. Naruto's expression softened as he looked around at his friends. "You all really are the best," he said quietly, feeling lighter than he had in a while. As the mood began to shift back to something more relaxed, Tenten, still eager to move the conversation forward, grinned. "All right, enough heavy stuff. Who wants more puppy chow?" She held up the bowl of snacks with a triumphant smile, and the girls quickly rallied around the new distraction. Naruto laughed at their antics, grateful for the change in subject. While the situation with his team still weighed on him, tonight had been a reminder that he wasn't alone. He had friends who cared about him, and for now, that was enough. As the night wore on, laughter filled the room again, and Naruto allowed himself to relax, knowing that he didn't have to face everything by himself. For now, surrounded by friends, he could just enjoy the moment. Naruto lay there, his mind split between two clear choices: get up and start his day as he should, or stay in the comfort of the moment, sandwiched between warmth and relaxation. It was rare for him to feel this sense of peace, surrounded by friends, especially after what he'd shared last night. His usual discipline wavered for just a moment longer, but the teachings of his Aji-san came back to him, reminding him of the path he'd set for himself. He took a deep breath, resolving that as much as he wanted to stay, he had a lot to do. The sun was beginning to rise, and he could feel the stirring of energy within him, his body's signal to move. Still, extracting himself from Hinata-chan's firm embrace would require more than just willpower. He thought about how he could manage without waking her, but it would take some careful maneuvering. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, forming a plan. Using his medical chakra control, just as he had last night, he gently manipulated her muscles to relax further. Hinata shifted, her grip loosening ever so slightly as he slid out from under her arm. She mumbled something incoherent in her sleep, but he smiled, satisfied she hadn't woken up. He turned to Haku next, who had been resting comfortably behind him. With her soft chill, she had always been easier to slip away from. He carefully slipped his arm free, and after a few seconds, he was out of the bed and standing beside it. Looking at the two of them still sleeping peacefully brought a sense of warmth to his chest. Naruto moved silently toward the door, glancing back at the levitating sleeping bags and then over at the dimmed room. He clapped his hands twice, and a faint seal shimmered, adjusting the light just enough for him to see his way out. As he slipped out of the bedroom and into the kitchen, he was already thinking about the tasks he had lined up for the day. There was always training, Fuinjutsu work, and then perhaps another meeting with Jiraiya about new techniques. He quietly started on breakfast, mindful of his sleeping guests. Despite the early hour, Naruto's mind was buzzing with ideas. Between his experiments in Fuinjutsu and his growing skill set, he felt like he was on the verge of something big, something that could not only improve his own abilities but also the lives of others in Konoha. Whether it was creating new tools for missions or simply making everyday life more comfortable, he was determined to push his limits. As the smell of food began to waft through the apartment, Naruto wondered when the others would wake up. He hoped they enjoyed the little slumber party they had shared. He knew it had lifted his spirits, even if they hadn't realized just how much their company meant to him. Just as Naruto was finishing the last of his preparations, he heard the soft padding of footsteps behind him. He turned around to see Haku, still sleepy but smiling softly at him. She stretched and yawned, her long hair falling gracefully over her shoulders. "Good morning, Naruto-kun," she said quietly, her voice still thick with sleep. "Morning, Haku-chan," he replied with a smile. "I was just finishing breakfast. How did you sleep?" "Very well," she replied, moving to sit at the table. "It's always nice to have everyone together like this. You did a great job hosting." Naruto chuckled. "I'm glad you think so. I wasn't sure what to expect, but it was fun." Haku gave him a knowing look, her dark eyes softening. "I'm sure it was," she teased lightly, though her tone was kind. "It's nice to have people around you who care." Naruto nodded, appreciating her understanding. He had never been one to ask for company, but the events of the last few days made him realize just how important it was to have people he could rely on. As the rest of the girls slowly started to wake up and join them, the apartment was filled once again with light chatter and laughter. It wasn't long before the conversation turned back to their training plans for the day and their usual banter about who could outdo whom. Naruto felt a sense of contentment wash over him as he watched his friends. Despite everything, he had people by his side, and that was more than enough. Naruto sprinted across the rooftops of Konoha, the cold air biting at his skin but invigorating him. The brisk morning was exactly what he needed to clear his head after the complexities of the night. His mind was constantly running, not just with his training but with his Fuinjutsu projects, his growing responsibilities, and the emotional complexities of the relationships he was developing with his friends. The feel of the wind and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat helped center him as he leapt from one building to another, each footstep as precise and light as the seals he worked on. As he neared the training grounds, Naruto felt the energy inside him rise. Today was going to be productive. He was determined to push himself even further. He thought about his emitter disc project and how it could revolutionize not only combat but general utility for shinobi. If he could manage to make the seals compact enough, every shinobi in the village could carry versatile, powerful tools without needing large scrolls or extensive preparation. Arriving at the training field, Naruto slowed to a stop. He stretched his muscles, already thinking about the training plan Kakashi had laid out for him. The chakra control exercises, the new earth jutsu, and of course, continuing to refine his Rasengan. His morning run had worked off some of the mental weight he had been carrying, and now, with a clear head, he was ready to begin his work. Before he could start, however, his clone appeared in a puff of smoke, carrying a list of notes he had written down from the conversation with his friends the night before. There were little details about the picnic and training session they planned with Sai, the ideas he wanted to run by Haku and the others, and even a reminder to ask his Aji-san about why he had hesitated earlier that morning. Naruto grinned to himself. His clone had been busy while he was out running. The sun began to rise higher, casting a warm glow over the village, and Naruto felt a sense of determination surge within him. He wasn't just working for himself anymore. He had friends, students like Haku, and even people like Hinata and Ino who trusted him. There were expectations, and while the weight of that responsibility would have crushed him in the past, now it fueled him. As he worked through his training routine, Naruto found his focus narrowing with each task. His chakra control was improving, his speed was increasing, and his mind was sharper than ever. Each jutsu, each Fuinjutsu design, brought him closer to his goals, and the thought of mastering Hiraishin felt less daunting with every step. Naruto allowed himself a brief smile as he paused between exercises, his breath visible in the chilly air. He was growing stronger, not just as a shinobi, but as a person. There were still things he didn't understand about himself, his hesitation earlier, his complex feelings about his team, but one thing was clear: he would keep moving forward, no matter what. With the sun now fully up and the village slowly coming to life, Naruto returned to his routine, determined to make this day count. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of the village's future more than ever. The decision to keep Naruto away from ANBU was one of the few things he was resolute about. He saw how much potential Naruto had and how the boy needed to keep building bonds with others, not isolate himself in the shadows. As the ANBU commander and advisors filed out of his office, Hiruzen found himself lost in thought. The idea of pairing Naruto with Jiraiya for the Chunin exams had its merits. While it wasn't ideal to split up Team 7, there were legitimate concerns about the balance of the team. Kakashi would undoubtedly continue to guide Naruto, but Jiraiya's training could help push the boy's skills even further. The Hokage knew that Naruto had grown far faster than most expected, both in power and in maturity. However, the question of whether to promote him had always been a contentious one. The boy had a natural genius for Fuinjutsu, and his ability to remove Anko's cursed seal was something even the elders couldn't ignore. But there was more to being a Chunin than just skill. It was about leadership, responsibility, and the ability to work within a team. This was where the cracks in Team 7 had started to show. Hiruzen sighed. He knew Naruto was struggling with the team dynamic, particularly with Sasuke and Sakura. Naruto craved camaraderie and trust, but the walls between him and his teammates had only grown higher over time. Splitting him from Team 7 might actually be in his best interest. Meanwhile, on the training field, Naruto stood in the middle of his clones, watching the effects of Jiraiya's swamp of the underworld jutsu slowly fade. Kakashi observed with his typical laid-back demeanor, though his eye was keenly fixed on Naruto's reaction. The kid had absorbed everything thrown at him, including the tension between him and Jiraiya. Naruto hadn't expected to learn an A-rank jutsu today, but he wouldn't complain. He could already see how useful this technique would be in a variety of situations. His mind raced with the possibilities, trapping enemies, controlling the battlefield, and even creating barriers to slow down pursuers. "Not bad, Gaki," Jiraiya said, his tone a little more light-hearted now that he had apologized. "You catch on quick. Keep practicing, though. That swamp is dangerous if you don't maintain control over it." Naruto nodded, but his eyes were distant as he mulled over everything. "Thanks, Ero-sennin," he said in a more neutral tone. He wasn't fully ready to forgive Jiraiya for everything, but he understood the Sannin's concern for him. "I'll practice it. It'll be useful." Kakashi noticed the brief flicker of tension still lingering between the two, but he didn't comment. Instead, he addressed Naruto. "Alright, Naruto, take a break and let your clones handle the next round of practice. You've been pushing yourself pretty hard." Naruto wiped a bit of sweat from his brow. "Sure, Hatake-sensei. I'll just take a few minutes." Jiraiya gave Naruto a lingering look before stepping away to confer with Kakashi. The two exchanged a few words, and while Naruto didn't hear everything, he picked up enough to know they were talking about him. Naruto sat on a nearby log, letting his clones continue practicing as his thoughts wandered. The idea of working with Sai or maybe Haku crossed his mind again. And while he loved Kakashi's guidance, he couldn't shake the feeling that he needed something different from his team. Jiraiya watched Naruto from a distance, his mind swirling with mixed feelings. He had wanted to protect the boy, keep him safe from the risks of altering the seal. But he realized now that he'd gone about it the wrong way. Naruto was not just any kid. He was driven, capable, and, most importantly, he had inherited more from his parents than just their talent, he had their will. Jiraiya couldn't keep treating him like a child who needed sheltering. "Maybe it's time to really let the kid grow," Jiraiya muttered under his breath, half to himself and half to Kakashi. Kakashi gave him a sideways glance, understanding the weight of Jiraiya's words. "Naruto's already grown a lot, but yeah. He's going to need more than what we've been giving him." As they watched Naruto's clones, both men silently acknowledged that the boy was destined for something far beyond what anyone expected. But what that would be was still unfolding, and they could only do their best to guide him. Back in the Hokage's office, Hiruzen picked up his pipe and took a slow, thoughtful puff. Naruto's future weighed heavily on his mind, but he felt confident in one thing: the boy was walking the right path, even if it was unconventional. For now, they would let Naruto participate in the Chunin exams, perhaps with a new team dynamic. But after that, the possibilities were endless, and Hiruzen had a feeling that whatever path Naruto chose, it would lead to great things, for both him and the village. "Perhaps it's time to start trusting him more," Hiruzen said quietly to himself. The will of fire burned strong in Naruto, and it was time to let that fire blaze. Kakashi and Jiraiya relaxed a little, though Kakashi's gaze still carried a hint of warning. Anko, recovering from the initial shock, leaned back against the nearby wall, letting out a deep sigh. She was still processing what she had just discovered: Naruto was the Yondame's son. It made a lot of sense in hindsight, but seeing it so clearly now was almost overwhelming. Jiraiya, crossing his arms, looked at the two kunoichi with a mix of annoyance and resignation. "Look, now that you know, you need to keep this to yourselves. Naruto doesn't know, and it's for his own safety. We've all worked hard to keep him protected from the enemies of the Fourth and his own burdens." Anko grumbled, her mind racing. "Fine, I get it. I'm not going to blab it to the world, but I'll be damned if I'm not going to keep an eye on the kid." Kakashi finally relaxed, his usual demeanor returning as he resheathed his kunai. "Good. He's been through enough without this kind of revelation hanging over him. Let him grow at his own pace." Kurenai, still a bit pale from the sudden realization, chuckled at her earlier comment. Hinata-chan really does have good taste. The thought of the shy Hyuga girl having her heart set on someone like Naruto brought a soft smile to her face, despite everything else. She's not the only one, Anko said, throwing a sideways glance at Kurenai, making the genjutsu mistress blush. Jiraiya rolled his eyes at the shift in conversation. Great. Teenage crushes. This is what my life has come to. You started this with your perverted books, Kakashi pointed out, causing Jiraiya to shoot him an indignant look. Before the conversation could get further off track, Kakashi turned his attention back to the kunoichi. Both of you, he said, his tone serious again, don't treat Naruto any differently because of this. He's earned where he is through his own hard work, not because of who his parents are. Anko smirked. You think I'm gonna go easy on him now? If anything, I'm going to push him harder. Kid's got more potential than most realize, and if he's anything like his old man, he's got a fire burning inside him that could light the whole world up. Kurenai nodded in agreement. Naruto deserves a chance to grow and be recognized for who he is, not just for his bloodline. Jiraiya grunted in approval. That's what I wanted to hear. Just, be discreet, alright? There's too much at stake to let this slip. The four of them stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared knowledge pressing down on them. The revelation of Naruto's lineage was something they all understood had the potential to change the dynamics of the village, but for now, it remained an S-rank secret, a secret they were all bound to protect. Right, Anko said, stretching. Time to go torment some academy students. Kurenai chuckled, feeling more at ease now. I'm sure they'll appreciate that. She gave Jiraiya and Kakashi a nod. Thanks for the clarification, and don't worry. My lips are sealed. Jiraiya and Kakashi watched the two kunoichi walk away, leaving the two men standing in the fading daylight. Kakashi spoke up after a moment. Think it'll hold? He asked, referring to the secret. Jiraiya shrugged, a grim look on his face. We can't control everything, but for now, we've done our part. Let's just hope that when the time comes, Naruto will be ready to face it. Kakashi nodded, his eye glancing toward the Hokage monument in the distance. He'll be ready. He's already more like Minato-sensei than anyone realizes. The two men stood in silence for a moment longer, before Kakashi pulled out his book again, flipping it open as if nothing had happened. Ready to get back to spying on the hot springs? Kakashi asked, voice laced with amusement. Jiraiya's grin returned. Now you're speaking my language. And just like that, the seriousness of the moment passed, though the weight of their shared secret lingered in the back of their minds. Back in the hospital, Naruto continued his shift, oblivious to the revelations happening just outside the clinic. As he finished treating another patient, he glanced at the clock, realizing he had a few more hours before his shift ended. A fleeting thought crossed his mind: what would his future look like? With all the training, missions, and growing responsibilities, he couldn't help but wonder where he was headed. But as quickly as the thought came, he dismissed it. He had work to do and people to help. And that was enough for now. As Naruto left the Hokage tower, his mind wandered briefly to the amusing conversation he had just had with his Aji-san. He still didn't quite understand the complexities of relationships and the pull he felt when surrounded by his friends, but he trusted his instincts. For now, he pushed those thoughts aside and focused on getting back to his duties at the hospital. There were patients who needed him, and he had already been away longer than intended. Back in the hospital, the clone that Naruto had left behind was efficiently handling the shift, but the original was glad to be back and take over. His clone dispelled with a puff of smoke, leaving Naruto with the collected memories of what had transpired in his absence. Thankfully, nothing too eventful had occurred, and his patients had been well cared for. As Naruto walked through the halls of the clinic, various nurses and staff members gave him friendly smiles. He still wasn't used to the warmer reception, but he appreciated it nonetheless. The days when people openly avoided him were fading, and though there were still those who carried lingering distrust, Naruto was slowly earning their respect. It was all part of the journey. He entered the next exam room, where a new patient was waiting, a middle-aged man who looked pale and uneasy. Naruto greeted him with his usual calm demeanor, listening carefully as the man explained his symptoms. Meanwhile, back at Naruto's apartment, Hinata and Ino had returned to the comfort of the bed, the allure of the high thread count sheets and luxurious atmosphere too tempting to resist. Tenten, now recovered from her earlier frustration, was also in a better mood after sharing some laughs with the other girls. The Naruto clones continued their studies, each focused on different tasks, which fascinated the kunoichi. They had never seen someone work as efficiently as Naruto did, using clones not just for battle but for learning and multitasking. "Your boy is something else, Hinata-chan," Ino said, stretching out luxuriously on the bed. "I mean, he's a hard worker, smart, and kind. Seriously, are you sure I can't steal him?" Hinata blushed lightly but smiled. "You'd have to get past me first, Ino-chan." Ino laughed. "I'd expect nothing less from you. But really, this place is amazing. It's hard to believe this is the same Naruto I used to know at the academy." Tenten, sitting nearby, chimed in. "He's definitely changed, but in a good way. The way he handles Fuinjutsu, and even how he helps at the hospital, it's impressive." Hinata nodded in agreement, feeling a sense of pride well up in her chest. Naruto had worked hard for everything he had, and seeing him flourish like this made her even more determined to support him in any way she could. As the afternoon wore on, the girls settled into a relaxed rhythm, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere of Naruto's apartment. Occasionally, a clone would bring them tea or snacks, further adding to the sense of comfort. Back at the academy, Konohamaru was still thinking about Naruto's advice. His mind replayed the conversation, remembering how his nii-chan had encouraged more strategic thinking instead of reacting impulsively. Konohamaru admired Naruto's cleverness and realized he had a lot to learn if he wanted to be as strong and smart as his big brother. "I'll show them next time," Konohamaru muttered to himself. "Next time, I'll be ready." At the Hokage Tower, Hiruzen sat back at his desk, reflecting on his earlier conversation with Naruto. His grandson had come so far, and it was clear that the boy was destined for great things. The Sandaime chuckled softly to himself, thinking about Naruto's innocent yet baffling question regarding relationships. The boy had a pure heart, no doubt about that. As he reviewed the latest village reports, Hiruzen's thoughts drifted to the future. The Chunin exams were approaching, and the world outside Konoha was becoming increasingly dangerous. Naruto would face many challenges ahead, but with the friends and allies he was gathering, Hiruzen knew the boy wouldn't face them alone. With a deep sigh, Hiruzen closed his eyes for a brief moment of peace. The will of fire burned brightly in Naruto, and it was a beacon of hope for the entire village. Later that night, as Naruto returned to his apartment after his hospital shift, he was greeted by the familiar warmth of his home and the presence of his friends. The sight of Hinata, Ino, and Tenten comfortably lounging in his living room brought a smile to his face. "Welcome back, Naruto-kun," Hinata called, her face lighting up as she saw him. "Hey, how was your shift?" Ino asked, sitting up with interest. "It was good," Naruto replied, stretching out his tired muscles. "A few patients, nothing too serious." "Well, we've been lounging around like lazy cats," Tenten said with a grin. "This place is too comfortable." Naruto chuckled, shaking his head. "You're all welcome to stay as long as you want. My clones can handle the cooking." The girls shared a laugh, and Naruto felt an overwhelming sense of contentment. For now, everything was right in his world, his friends were here, his work was going well, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like he truly belonged. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, surrounded by those he cared about, Naruto could just relax and enjoy the moment. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and subscribe for more content. Support the original author by clicking their profile link in the pinned comment of the first video of this series. They deserve the love. Want early access and exclusive content? Join my Patreon community, link below. Your support fuels these videos. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and I'll catch you in the next video. Stay entertained, stay safe. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and subscribe for more content. Support the original author by clicking their profile link in the pinned comment of the first video of this series. They deserve the love. Want early access and exclusive content? Join my Patreon community, link below. Your support fuels these videos. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and I'll catch you in the next video. Stay entertained, stay safe.